Hi, this is Dwayne, also known as Major Death. Join me 8 p.m. Central, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at twitch.tv/MajorDeath, and let's get better at Hearthstone together. But right now, it's time for Concede.
Greetings.
Hello.
My greetings.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 132 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. Hello, my name is RidiculousHat. I'm here in sunny Gadgetzan, New York, and while it's sunny, don't let that fool you. It is still quite cold for some reason because April decided it wanted to stay that way. But that little chill in the air you feel isn't just the weather, it's the Witchwood. But joining us from sunny Karazhan, California, we've also got our friend Botticus. How you doing, buddy?
Witchwood. Oh man, I'm
Hey.
excited. I can't wait for tomorrow.
And for those of you that don't know, we're recording this 13 hours before the expansion comes out. So, we're totally not jonesing. We're totally not just desperate to play.
Man, it's a good thing that we actually are able to record this now, because my internet was almost like, no, you don't get to have any internet tonight. But got it fixed, and I'm excited to talk about some Witchwood.
Yeah, didn't they fix your internet in like under 4 hours, which I didn't know internet companies did?
Under an hour. It was like I called and they're like, "Hey, we have an appointment." I was like, "Okay, so like in a week, 2 weeks, how long is it going to be till somebody comes out?" They're like, "Oh no, like, between 5 and 7 today." I'm like, "It's 5:05." And then an hour later they showed up and they said, "Your modem sucks, here's a new one." And it was fixed and it was great.
My emotions right now are very complex because I'm glad they fixed it that quickly, but the idea that kind of service can exist is just, it's like hearing that you got a unicorn and I'm happy you have it, but I want a unicorn.
Anyway, enough about my internet. Let's talk about Witchwood with our awesome other people on the show.
Well, let's check in from the Maelstrom in Louisiana. Hey, Appa, what's your opinion on unicorns?
Unicorns are dope. Also, they can't be targeted by spells or hero powers.
That's just the one. We don't know if that's a unicorn general ability. We've only seen one example.
That's the unicorn ability now.
Okay.
Aren't unicorns like known for being unique? So I would imagine that might be the only unicorn ever, right?
Yeah, I think that's the origin of the name. They're unicorns.
Yeah, I'm very excited for tomorrow. Like Hat said, it's in like 13 hours, which also meant I just want to get this out of the way right now. I don't want to wait for coin concedes. This just needs to be set up top. So I did not have enough money to buy the pre-purchase, and I was sitting on 4 Witchwood packs and 10 gold, and Hat and a bunch of other awesome, amazing, sweet people from Twitter and the Hearthstone universe gifted me enough for a pre-purchase. So now I have cards tomorrow, and I'm real excited for it. And y'all are the best, and I love everybody.
Not my fault. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It was Nate Wolf started putting it together, but yeah, it's Appa, buddy. We're glad to be here for you, man. It's and we can't deny you this sweet, sweet Witchwood Eve magic.
Also, I think every time we say Witchwood now, it needs to be said Witchwood.
And speaking of spooky surprises, we've actually got a guest all the way from Undercity, Pennsylvania. We've got our friend Edelweiss. How you doing, Edelweiss?
I'm doing great. I got back from Rio. It's colder than I was hoping when I got back, but it's still good to be home.
Well, welcome home to the lovely Undercity weather. Turns out that Rio has better weather than a lot of places.
Turns out, yeah.
Yes.
It was 80 degrees and sunny. It was a good time.
Oh man, we're back in the unicorn world again. Okay, before I get carried away, let's talk a little bit about what the show's going to be like today. We're going to start off by introducing our friend Edelweiss. We're going to talk about ladder a bit, news. We got some good news about Witchwood. We got tournament discussion, which will be very relevant with our guest today, and the Dexplanations will be talking all about the new cards and new decks and new archetypes. I will tell you right now, we are not going to do card by card with the rest of the cards that were revealed since the last show, because then we will finish recording after the set has come out, and we'll just go play it. So we want to make sure that we respect your time and ours and talk about more about bigger picture stuff. But first, let's get to meet our friend Edelweiss. Appa, why don't you take us through this interview?
No. I won't do it. Okay,
Uh,
I'm gonna
Wow. Flat out.
Rude.
All right, so Edelweiss, why don't you just first start off by telling us a bit about yourself? Like, who are you? What do you do in the world of Hearthstone? How'd you get into Hearthstone? Those kind of things.
Yeah, so I played a lot of Magic when, like, at first as a kid, because like my brother played, and so I played like, you know, played a burn deck. I played a green deck, like just like beasts and things. And then as I got more competitive in high school, I did like Pro Tour qualifiers. I managed to top 8 one of those, but wasn't able to win. But that was like the first time I ever made money playing a card game, because I got a box of cards for top 8ing, and then I hosted my own Magic draft and won that. So I got like people's $10 entry fees and the best cards in the box. That was pretty sweet. And then in college, I played Magic with a bunch of friends, and eventually Hearthstone came out, and people were like, "Hey, you should play this. It's free, and like it's something you can do on the side." So it was just like my casual game to Magic. And after I moved away from Cleveland and all my friends who played Magic, Hearthstone became more and more my main game, especially since I didn't have money to play Magic anymore. And so after playing like 2 years of Arena or whatever, I have a pretty full collection and I can make whatever I want now.
So your breakthrough in the tournament scene is pretty cool. How did you end up in that position? Like, were you always a tournament player? I know you said Hearthstone was kind of casual for you at first, but when did you kind of transition into like more serious play?
Yeah, so I got to Philadelphia and had 0 friends because I moved here for my wife, and I got caught up in like I went to a fireside and met some people there, learned about Nerd Street Gamers, who were hosting this big, I mean, big for what I considered big at the time, Hearthstone tournament. It didn't end up having a bunch of people, but like first place got $500, and I ended up winning that tournament. This was like right after Knights of the Frozen Throne came out, and I won it with Madame Goya Shaman, Nizoth Warrior, Tempo Elemental Rogue with Kalaseth, before everyone started doing the Bone Mirror stuff. And I can never remember what the last deck was. I feel like it was some kind of... Oh, it was a Paladin that got banned every round. That's right. And people in the Philly Hearthstone community kind of took notice and kind of, welcomed me. And so there are 4 of us, including myself, that we are the more competitive ones in Philadelphia. And so we kind of practice together, and they're much better at ladder than I am. But that's kind of how I started, having more drive to do tournaments and stuff.
Rewind a sec. Did you say Madame Goya Shaman?
I did. I did say Madame Goya Shaman.
Okay. What was this deck? This deck sounds sweet.
It's
you
fat
missed
shaman dudes, and then you just Madame Goya your hero power and pull out the fat dudes.
Well, but what's funny is that so Asmodai played the deck like when it was good,
I was gonna say because you said this was Knights of the Frozen Throne, right? I'm not like
right. So,
mixing my
yeah,
timelines.
Osmodai played the deck probably like either before or right after Ungoro. I feel like before Ungoro, right? And people like pushed it to the side and didn't really play it anymore after that rotation because they felt that it lost too much when you didn't have Elemental Destruction, I think, and some of the other older Shaman cards. Also the 2-mana Overload, draw 2 card. But I was like, you know what? I feel like it's still got enough game, and it was like you have Madame Goya and Barnes, and your game plan is to either like Barnes something and Ancestral Spirit it, or Madame Goya a hero power and get out like Yashiraj into something, or just like something big. So yeah, it played pretty similarly to Resurrect Priest, except I think much more fair. And I farmed Pirate Warrior that entire tournament, especially because they were running Bittertide Hydra, and I got a Volcano Lethal, which was fantastic.
You'll love to see that. Did you have a Lich King in that deck too? That sounds like it'd be sweet, but maybe not. Maybe no room. I don't know. I'm fascinated because I haven't heard of Lich King. Okay.
No, I just had like Earth Elementals, Thing from Below's, and
I didn't want to get caught up too much on the deck, but it sounds sweet.
Yeah.
So
it was just
pry.
like the game plan against Pirate Warrior was just get a big taunt like Earth Elemental, Ancestral Spirit it. If you do that twice, like they lose.
And that was before they were probably playing a bunch of Spellbreakers too.
Exactly.
So
No one was running Spellbreaker. It was fantastic.
Anyway, now you build the deck and it's 29 cards in Spellbreaker.
Yeah.
So you had success at Copa America. That's a tournament, right? I'm not mixing mine.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
I went 7-0 in qualifiers.
Yeah. So what was your testing and practice regime for that, and what was your strategy going into that tournament?
Yeah, so I had a friend helping me out, and he came to my place, and we would just run some testing. I was trying to play these control decks. Like I really liked the sort of, some people called it Thief Priest, right? Just the control deck where you would just steal all their Void Lords or whatever they were doing. And I've always liked Mage, so the lineup was kind of like Control Lock, Big Spell Mage, Control Priest, and I forget. Probably I don't remember what the last one was, but I O2'd on that qualifier. So the next one, I was like, all right, I'm gonna totally change my game plan. I'm just gonna do these aggressive decks, because when I played Magic, I played Red Deck Wins, like almost exclusively. It was the only thing I could afford, and
yes,
yeah,
the burn.
Exactly.
Lightning Bolt's my favorite card. So
yeah, my best meta for Magic was my deck ran like Goblin Guide, Kiln Fiend, played a Geopede, and those were the only creatures.
It's for those of you that don't know what we're talking about. Envision Aggro Shaman when it had Trog Golem, and you get the idea. Just
Imagine what is it? The I Can Taste Mana, that card, the 1/3.
Oh yeah, the Mana Addict.
Yeah. Imagine if Mana Addict were a good card. That's what Kiln Fiend is.
Yeah.
It's not good in Hearthstone because you can attack creatures directly, but in Magic, it's insane. So, yeah, aggro seemed to be more my element. I played Zoo, like Frozen Zoo with Unlicensed Apothecaries and the 3-mana potion, Blood Fury potion. I had Raises Tempo Elemental Rogue, and then just Murloc Pally and Evolve Shaman. And the idea was to roll over other aggressive decks because the aggro decks I picked were good against other aggro decks. and then to also be able to take care of any quest like anti-control lineups. And I just hoped no one brought full control.
So I usually like strategies like that whenever I can. Whenever I'm either not having a ton of success with the control lineups, I'm just gonna smork a lot and make people like deal with my stuff.
Turns out it's pretty effective, and sometimes
Yeah.
they can't deal with your stuff.
It's really good at kind of forcing people to have the answers, and like sometimes you just get free wins because it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're like, I'm dead. Okay, next one.
Like, I think what embodies it perfectly is something that Brian Kibler said on stream once, which was that threats are just inherently better than answers. So, like, he'll bring this up usually when people are like, oh, you need to put in weapon removal for Skull of the Venari, or you need to put in Geist. And it's like, yes, the thing can save you, but it has to be the situation wherein they draw that thing that you need to destroy, and you draw the thing that destroys it. Whereas on the threat side of things, you just need to draw the threat, right? So
Yeah,
it's always
Kibler's a smart dude.
yeah, he's one of my favorites.
Also a fan of the aggro decks.
Is he?
Kind of,
At
it's
mid
just-
range, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Aggro mid
He
range.
he has
Big fan of
made a
land war
career
elves.
out of attacking with small green and or red creatures.
Yes.
But he's
Yeah.
also made a career out of like dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's not to love
That's true.
about dragons? Yeah.
It's when they beat me. When they deal 3 damage to all of my minions. That's the main thing I don't like about dragons.
Whenever they're
think-
a 4-mana excavated evil, that brings a 3/3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main thing I don't like about dragons is when they play things from my deck. I think that's what I don't like.
So, what was the experience like of playing in the Copa America tournament, and how has that kind of changed your perspective as a player moving forward?
So it was really interesting. In the qualifier part, like, yeah, there was more pressure building as I kept more and more of a winning score, right? But even that last game where I ended up 7-0, it was just sort of like, oh wow, so like I made it, right? That's it, cool. But then the qualifying duels was the next stage, and that's where they took the top 8 from each of the 4 qualifiers, and we played off to get the top 16. And on that one, like, I was up against Muzzy first. We had the opportunity to change decks, and just the period of waiting just like built the tension up so much that I like freaked out. At this point, I had been recruited by Sogoy, and so I had a team captain who was kind of helping me out. So even though I ended up losing to Muzzy before my other 2 games, he was able to kind of talk me down, calm me down, and that helped a ton. The first one of my qualifying duels games in losers bracket was pretty close, just because the guy's lineup wasn't great for me. Like, he had a spiteful druid that had hungry crabs, and like he drew Keliseth on curve. It was a bad time, but I managed to pull through. And then the next one, I just 3-0'd the guy. It was pretty ridiculous. But then actually being in Rio, I think it was less pressure than the qualifying duels because, like, at least for me, getting a free trip to Rio was already kind of winning, and this isn't like my job. So it was nice to kind of just hang out with all the players, and most of them are professionals in some capacity, and it was funny to see, like, yeah, these are really like young people, like kids, like some of them were 20 in college, and I sort of felt, even though I ended up like losing to Zalay and losing to Hoy, I was able to kind of reassure myself and be like, look, I have an eighth, a tenth maybe of the games under my belt than these people do, because I have like real life things to do. I have to cook dinner for my wife and I. I have to like clean our apartment. I have to, actually work a part-time job at least. And so when I remind myself of like, yeah, I'm not a professional, I was sort of like able to feel better about my losses to people like Hoy and Zalay, which I think you can't feel too bad about losing to them.
If you ever feel bad about losing, just say to yourself, 7-0 is pretty good.
Yeah, 7-0 was pretty good. Yeah.
All right, so do you think you're ready to join us and talk about Witchwood?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I know I ramble on a lot.
No,
No,
good. We like rambling. That is what the show is for.
Yeah, we're having you on because we want to get to know you. Like, it's awesome stories and getting to know like the tournament side, which I'm kind of barely getting into. Appa has a good amount of experience, but getting more of like a high end competitive side, just getting to hear about that is really cool.
Yeah, don't apologize for talking. We like when you do that. Keep doing it.
Mad at Arms in chat. He said it's not a coin concede if it's not nearly 2 hours, and I mean he's right.
Yeah, it's we
I agree.
we're pretty soft with the length requirements of the podcast, but we do have some ladder to talk about, and I think this is probably, I don't know about you all, this is the least ladder I've played in a long time, cause I'm in the waiting room, but I did get my 20 packs, got my packs. So right now I played Wild to clear my quests. I played a little bit of Standard, but every time I queued up, I'm like, I can't play with Witchwood cards, so I guess I'll play a few games. But right now, just waiting. What about you, Appa?
This is probably some of the most ladder I've played in a while, believe it or
Okay.
not.
I believe it.
I don't know. So I think this meta is stale. I think that's like just a thing that it is. I think it's just objectively stale, but I still like it because I know all the decks. So I feel like I'm getting good games in, like no matter what I'm playing, which I really enjoy because I'm really taking time to kind of focus on my play and kind of brush the rust off that I still have, like from when I took a really, really long break. And I think this meta is definitely something that's helping me with that because all the decks are so powerful and there's like edges to be gained in like pretty much every matchup, unless you're Barnesing on turn 3. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it in Standard at least. And in Wild, I was playing Big Priest for a bit, and then I kind of got stuck in between rank 3 and rank 2. I just kept bouncing back from the floor to 2 to the top of 3, and then I just switched to the Egg Paladin deck and went 10-1 to Legend.
That deck's pretty good.
Yeah, it's nuts. If you want to win games in Wild, I'm not sure how much different it'll be after Witchwood comes out, but I can't imagine it gets like significantly worse. That deck's good.
I haven't tried it yet, but I fully intend to.
Yeah. You like put a bunch of pressure on the board, and then you put these 2-mana 0/2s down, and then they say, you won't, and then they do, and you get a 4/4.
Yeah, you're like, Blessing of Kings. Now you have to deal with this, and then when you do, it's a 4/4 again.
Yeah, like some of my favorite games have come from just like having a bad hand, landing a Nerubian Egg on 2, and then like Blessing of Mighting it, having them silence it, and been like, Kings it. Silence it again. Oh wait, you don't have another one. Take 4.
Or Tarim, trade with your thing. Now I have a 4/4. Then you have all 3/3s.
Yeah, it turns out, Botticus was saying, it turns out even pulling out 0/2 eggs with Call to Arms is pretty good. They're just delayed 4/4s.
Well, like, it's like every one of your minions in that deck is a Kingsbane. Like, it just keeps the buff.
Yeah.
And it just feels really powerful when all of your minions are like, you kill this, but I keep the Blessing of Kings. Like, it just doesn't, like, my 4/6 is now a 4/4. What do I do? Oh,
Yeah,
face you for 4.
all of the minions in that deck are like very efficient, and then also do something else on top of being very efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's.
yeah.
I'm curious what Paladin looks like in Standard. I think in Wild it'll still be fine.
Yeah. So I hit Legend in Wild for the first time, which I was really excited about. Still need to hit Legend in Standard on NA, and then also on EU for the old Triple Crown, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, true Triple Crown would be like Legend on Asia too, but I don't have enough of a collection on 3 servers. That's too much.
Yeah, we call that the old Zixo, because that was
The old-
back. Yeah.
the
We
old-
call that the current Gara.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Gara's insane.
Gara plays a lot of Hearthstone. What about you, Edelweiss?
Yeah.
How's your ladder experience going?
Well, yeah, I played like ladder during downtime at Copa a bit, and I kind of didn't even realize when it was suddenly like, oh, hey, look, I just hit Legend. Well, that was cool. Like it was with the Rally Valley Pally,
Oh yes.
Yeah.
which is
Rally
like one of my
Valley
favorite
Pally.
decks. I'm very excited to do it with Countess Ashmore, so you can tutor the weapon. But after that, not so much. I was traveling on a plane, and then I just got home. I have been playing some Molten Giants decks just to try it in its brief unnerfed state before it goes into Wild tomorrow. Not sure if people realize this or not, but yeah, Molten Giant, since the patch like yesterday or something, is unnerfed for like 2 days in Standard.
So
Yeah,
unfortunately, by the time you hear this, you won't have any chances unless you're currently watching the live stream. So
Yeah, I've been doing some extra work for like TVs and movies and stuff back down in New Orleans because they have like films and stuff. It's like relatively big film city, but I was actually out working on one of those yesterday when they announced it. I was like, "What? I can't play with this today?" So I played with it a lot last night when I got home, and I was actually posting like some long forgotten tips that people may have forgotten. Like when you're playing Control Priest versus Molten Giant against Warlock, you can heal their face, and it's actually not bad for you a lot of the time. But yeah, it was nice. It was a good bit of nostalgia. Plus, Q being Molten Giant is pretty broken.
Yeah, but also if you're gonna throw down a Jiraxis, remember that you need to play the Molten Giants first.
I'm so sad that Jiraxis just isn't going to be played for a while until they nerf something, because either you recruit a 315 or you recruit a Voidlord, and one of those is a Voidlord. So Jiraxis is just going to be sidelined for a little while, I think, unless the Warlock decks just take on a really different look for some reason.
Yeah, your options are like Voidlord, 5/7 with charge, or 315.
Yeah.
And the other ones just do more, which is so sad. I love Jiraxis. I love that card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you can't really beat Control Lock because they have Twisting Nethers, but at least Cube Lock. I was able to win some as like I was doing like straight up hand lock essentially, like Twilight Drakes, Mountain Giants, Molten Giants, Jiraxis, none of the demon stuff.
Shadowflame?
Maybe I think one of maybe.
What year is
I-
it? Is it
I put a
2014?
Shadowflame. I put a Shadowflame in my cube block whenever I built it. I took out the Tal'Daram and the 2 Faceless. I just put in 2 Molten Giant and a Shadowflame because it's just like another cube activator. And then the Molten Giant Shadowflame combos traditionally gross. So
Yeah, I really
that
wanted
one felt good.
to throw it back, but yeah, I mean, I was able to just like, okay, it's a file clear, hit you for 16, you're dead. Like,
Yeah. The file's pretty good. How about you, Bot? How's your ladder grind?
So yeah, I've still been playing a lot. I hit Legend, I think right after the show last week with Valley Rally Pally. A lot of people I felt like just were not mulliganing correctly against me because I think everybody just assumes, oh, Paladin, it's aggro Paladin, and then you're like Stonehill Defender, and they're like, oh no. But then they're like, okay, so this is a control Paladin, and then you're like, Blessing of Kings hit you for a lot, and then they're like, I don't know what's going on. I beat Surrender, who I like sneaky got him because I was like, I'm gonna put you to 4 when I have 7 mana, and then I'm gonna leave it so that you really want to clear my board. And then he cleared my board, and I double consecrated him and killed him. And I went back and watched his stream later, and he had just like infinite healing in hand, and probably didn't see it coming, which was great. And then I was trying to learn how to play Q block better, got up to rank 3 with a pretty decent win rate on Asia. But the most important thing I did is I played my first Challenger Cup, and I'm really sad because I feel like I had a really sick lineup and it was really good, but I played really badly in my first round and I lost.
Yeah, that lineup looked dope. I liked it.
Yeah, so I was playing Zoolock, Dude Paladin. The Zoolock had Dragon Slayers and then Combo Priest, and basically I just wanted to ban Warlock and beat up on Priest decks, and it felt like it was really good. But as I said, I played very poorly in my first match, which sucked because I had a pretty good lineup against it. And then round 2, my opponent just like didn't ready up, and then in the middle of playing my third match, they're like, "Hey, we're supposed to play," and I was like, you didn't click ready," and they're like, "Yeah, well, I'm on mobile," and I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, "I'm already playing my next match. I don't know what you want me to do," and so he was upset. But we won the next 3 rounds, and then got knocked out the round after. But it was actually a lot of fun. Planning on doing more. I'm just sad that I'm not going to be able to use that same lineup. Going to have to think of some spicy new things for more of these. But excited to play in some more and try to qualify for a Challenger Finals. It feels doable. I don't want to say easy, but it doesn't feel like I'm just playing against a bunch of pro players also trying to. I feel like I'm playing against a bunch of competent players, and it feels like reasonable to be able to win a Challenger Cup in like 10 to 15 cups.
Yeah, I feel
Which
like
is not that
if you
many.
just keep playing with solid lineups and just like play tight across like most of them, then you'll probably have like a pretty good shot to qualify for it.
Yeah,
But the problem is the meta is completely thrown out the window.
Yeah. Also,
I am
don't take
intentionally. Oh, sorry.
don't take mass dispels 3 times against what was it? Combo mage, Exodia mage. Yeah,
Oh.
definitely didn't need that third one.
It seems less
that was
useful.
too many.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm intentionally playing in a Challenger Cup tomorrow night because it's gonna be a clown fiesta and it's gonna be incredible. And I put my deck building skills a little higher than other people's, so I think it's gonna be great.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that
it'll be fun
18-hour
at least.
meta is like something else. Like you get to see just the wonkiest deck. Like it's I remember a year ago on Goro Meta, a friend of mine, Brewski in THL, was rank 1 legend for a minute with an average zoo deck that had Ravasaur runts, and then he lost a dog who was playing Moreau's Quest Rogue. And that's just the kind of thing that happens in the first day. It's like, surprise, Moreau's, and they're 5/5s. Turns out, by the way, there are better things to do once you have the quest completed than make 1 5/5 every turn, but we didn't know that at the time. It was a simpler time.
Well,
It was
when
also
you
the
only have
time-
to do 4, it's a little easier.
That was also the time when we also just played shielded mini beast and we're okay with it.
I have no problem with Ravasaur Run. I think that card will have its time, but there's other 2-drops around. The other 2-mana 2/2 that people are playing gives all minions in your deck +1/+1, and that card's better. A little better.
I forgot to ask Edelweiss, did you like get any ladder finishes last? Because the season just like the first season of points rolled over. So did you get like points from Copa America for last season, or was it like not enough?
I think I feel like these points go for this season
Okay.
because this
yeah,
is
'cause
the
it was
second
after.
Copa America, right?
Yeah, so how many did you get any points from it? I don't know.
I think I got like 4 or something, which like I don't know, it's more than I get from ladder because I kind of hit legend and I'm like, cool, I'm done now. I don't have to ladder. Forget this.
Yeah, the 4 points adds up actually, especially for NA, considering NA you needed like 21 points, and on Europe you needed like 35 or something super high.
Yeah,
I don't know
to
how
be
they're gonna
honest,
fix that eventually.
I don't even know the point breakdown for like legend finishes because I hate the grind so much. I don't know. If I get better at it, maybe I'll do it. But so many times it's just like, and I'm bored of playing the same deck. I'm gonna play fun things now.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot in the last episode, but the legend grind I think has some pretty deep-seated issues with structure that need some help. But that's another podcast. For right now, why don't we talk a little bit about the news of this upcoming week?
All right, so news this week. I was hoping there was not going to be much outside of, hey, Witchwood is coming, and but we actually got some pretty cool things. I'm going to go over them fairly quickly, so stop me if you have something to say. They had a article out that has patch 11.0 for the Witchwood. Patch highlights are you can get 3 free packs. The biggest thing is you can now borrow friends' decks when you play against them in a friendly challenge. I think this is like an insane announcement, and I can't believe that they're not advertising it more, because I feel like everybody that I've heard is just like, this is a great addition, and they just like barely brought it up. And I was
Yeah, it was like an afterthought. They were just like, here's all this cool stuff. Also, let's shove this in here.
they're like, hey, Witchwood's cool. You should buy packs and like Witchwood stuff. And then they found the borrowed decks, and I'm just like, oh, this is so good. It's just like bringing new players. I think it's fantastic. I can't wait. I don't even know if I'm gonna use it, but I love it.
It's just like good for the health of the game. It's like one of those things where it's like, yes, this is great for growth.
Well, it's really good for new players, or rather, it's really good if you're trying to refer someone to the game, and you talk about like you try and show them a deck, and they're like, "Here, you play a game," and they get to experience it. It's basically just the players with established collections doing the work for Blizzard of bringing people on board, of just getting them that first hit into the veins of like, this is what a deck feels like, that when you have a fully powered collection. And for those who don't know, it's as simple as it sounds. When you challenge each other, there's a borrow decks button at the bottom, and you click it, and you see your friend's collection, and you click a deck, and then you get to play it. And this also might be a setup for tournament mode, because if you can see each other's collections and what decks you have built, one of the biggest ways to cheat in tournaments is that you have multiple decks built of the same class and you pick one of the other ones. And so this way you can see their collection and their built decks, and you can see they only have one druid or one priest or one mage or whatever. That might be set up for tournament mode, or whatever we want to call it, because I know they said don't call it tournament mode.
right. So a couple other things. There's like a little announcement about Noble Garden. I guess it's an Easter event that's coming up. There's some chalkboard things of interest. Oh, there was a change to stealth. So for instance, when you used to get the Kodo card from Deathstalker Rexar and you paired it with a stealth minion, when you would play it, it would knock itself out of stealth because the battle cry would like deal damage to something and it wouldn't be stealth anymore. They changed it so that the only way to get your creatures out of stealth now is to attack with them. So that's a new thing that happened. Also, we mentioned the 20 mana Molten Giants that you can play in Standard, which is not going to be relevant when the set comes out. And let's see, was there anything else I wanted to talk about from this? Anyway, we have a couple links in the show notes for you to check out. Check that out. All right. Next piece of news is the Witchwood Invitational. They're having this Friday, so right the day after the set comes out, they're going to have a bunch of cool players come and play with all of the new cards. We got Allie Straza, Tyler, Firebat, Orange, Dog, RDU, Savitz, and Show are going to basically be playing all the new cards, kind of showing them off. They seem to be doing this now kind of with all of the new releases. So it'll be exciting to see kind of what everyone is able to brew up and play. Hopefully some of us get a chance to watch this. I don't know, Edelweiss, are you planning on checking this out? Are you gonna have time to?
I don't know. I'm starting a web design boot camp pretty soon, so not sure how much time I'll have for that kind of stuff. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, either way, we can check out the decks after, right? We can see what they all decided to play, see their takes on all the new decks. Anybody else have anything about the Invitational?
It's
All
probably
right.
the only tournament we'll be covering for the next couple of weeks because they're understandably taking a couple weeks off from tour stops. The next one is April 27th. So this will likely be what we talk about in Tournament Invitational next week. And there's not going to be a lot of serious tournaments for a couple weeks. So I'm glad they're throwing this.
Sounds good. All right, the next little article, just they had an article on the Play Hearthstone website that kind of introduces all the characters, gives a bit of backstory. I definitely suggest we kind of say this almost every show now, but if you want to know about lore and stuff, I know that Eve from Velen's Chosen will probably be going over this on their next episode. So make sure if you want more of a deep dive into all the characters, check out the article and go talk to Eve because I'm sure she'll delve into these quite a bit. BlizzCon has been announced. It will be November 2nd and 3rd. Tickets go on sale. The first ticket sales will be Wednesday, May 9th at 7 p.m. Pacific. I have my calendar set for an alarm to go off that morning to remind me all day that I need to try to see if I can get tickets because this will be my first BlizzCon. I'm actually going to try to attend the inside.
This will be your second BlizzCon. The first one in the doors.
Are we going to call it like one and a
Hopefully.
half? Like a BlizzCon and a half?
I guess. You going to be able to make it to this BlizzCon hat?
I'm planning on it. Wait, is half a BlizzCon a Blizzlet? Is that how that works?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask their podcast. I might be able to ask them in the near future.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm supposed to announce anything about that.
Yes.
Anyway,
I
everybody
also
will
am
have
not
already
sure.
heard that episode by then.
But yes, I am fully intending on being at BlizzCon again. There are too many good people there. And, you know, some days I just say, man, it's 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday. I wish I could get a $17 drink from the Hilton. There's only one place that satisfies that urge.
Bro, I got like a vodka cranberry or something, and it was like $13, and I was like, oh my god!
Yeah. The terrifying part is that every time you go, there's a line out the door, too. So you know that, like, they have no reason to drop the price. Anyways.
And then each time I go, there's a greater chance of me coming back.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how that event thing works out. But it is so much fun, and Con Before the Storm as well is so much fun. I'm really hoping that we can be on that panel again because it was great last year. And just seeing everyone there is... It's really... I don't love cons, if I'm being honest with y'all. I was at PAX East this past weekend, and the only reason that I really enjoyed is the people that I saw there. And the same with BlizzCon. It's all about... You know, the environment can be stressful and chaotic, but when you're with people you know, and like Rob was there from Japan. How often am I going to get to see that guy? Like, that's really what it's all about is the community, and I think that it's a really great example of how people can come together over the games we love.
I agree. Have you been able to attend a BlizzCon before, Edelweiss?
Only virtual ticket. I've done a virtual ticket the last 2 years, but so far I've never made enough money to go to the real event.
Well, hopefully, maybe you can. Well, how does HGG is going to be there this year, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know
Yes,
how.
that's what they said.
Yes.
Well, maybe we can get you qualified or something. I don't know how all that works. Anyway, let's. The last piece of info here. There was an interview with Ben Brode about the Monster Hunt. Well, at least some info came out through Ben Brode and some other things. I don't have a whole lot to say about this because I didn't get to delve into it too much, but we have a link in the show notes for you to check it out. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say about it.
I do.
Okay,
So,
go ahead, Hat.
Ben Brode said Q-Block's on their radar, and if it stays the way it is, they might have to nerf it. Ben Brode said that. So if your sky is falling, like, tape it back into place for a minute. Like, it's okay. It's Ben Brode said they're watching it, they're aware, and I think it's very important to know that they have been much better about nerfs this year than they were the year before. And Quest Rogue got nerfed, I think it was 7 or 8 weeks after it came out. UI Jade Druid got nerfed less than 5 weeks after it came out. They will move fast if they have to. They specifically are coming out before the set is even out and saying, we're watching this archetype. So be aware that they're aware and everything's gonna be okay. It's all gonna be fine. And also he said that the 4 different monster hunters, when you win with all of them, you get to fight Hagatha, which is less related to Q block, but more related to fun, so be aware of that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I did feel like a nice way of nerfing Q Block would have been to just Hall of Fame Doomguard, and considering they didn't print anything good enough to keep a zoo alive, I feel like that might have been the most elegant solution, but it's too late now.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. We really don't know, and I think that a metagame built on the foundation of A, we want to play with these new cards, and B, we want to not lose to Q block will still be an interesting meta, and I hope that there is enough diversity there and enough options. I will tell you that I am putting 2 saps in every deck I play on day 1. Nice Void Lord, bro, and it's going to go away, and then I'm going to hit them with Cold Bloods. So anyways, before I get carried away about Rogue, before we get to the Rogue section, we don't even have a Rogue section, that's a missed opportunity. Let's talk about a tournament or two.
It's the Grand Tournament!
Alright, so I want to talk about a couple tournaments that happened this week. There was the Geico Hearthstone Showdown, which it used to be called Onog. It happened at PAX East. I was there. It was cool. I met Cora. She was there. Super nice. Exactly as nice as you think, unless you think she's not nice, in which case you're really wrong. She's the nicest. And this was a pro versus amateur bracket. Kind of weird. There were 8-person tournaments. And if you won the 8-person single elim tournament, you got placed into the pro versus amateur bracket, which ended up being 8 pros and then 8 qualifying amateurs through the 64-person open. I know that's confusing. Basically, if you won a single elim 8-person tournament, then you got entered into a 16-person double elim tournament. And the double elim tournament was all pros. Tons of pros. Though it turns out, oddly enough, the top qualifying amateur and the person that made it to the finals was Steve in the amateur tournament. You may know him as Yo It's Flow, who is also very good at Hearthstone. And I think not quite a professional, but pretty close to a professional. But anyways, pros were invited, amateurs qualified. Amnesiac beat Yo It's Flow in the finals. Disguised Toast was third. Blah, who was an amateur, got fourth. I was talking to Jetlaw at the tournament, who's a friend of mine, and he said they worked together, and that Blah has never even hit Legend and was top 4 of this tournament, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Azorius Cub and Dr. J were 5th and 6th, and I'm not even going to try. What is this? Mygo Phasa and Ali Straza were 7th and 8th. So that was kind of cool to see. The tournament rules were a little funky, and it wasn't super well advertised. Onog, One Nation of Gamers, really did a great job putting this on year over year, but they no longer exist as an organization. So this tournament wasn't even in the app. You had to follow Geico Gaming to see the tweets. It was low profile, but still, it was casted by Cora, and then Nostum and Just Sayin were rotating, and then Dr. J did a little bit of the casting too, so like some high profile talent. And it was on the Play Hearthstone channel, just was lower visibility than I expected. Then there's Copa America. Our own friend Edelweiss here played in that. There were 4 groups of 16 qualified players. The top 2 for each group cut to a single elim top 8. Muzzy won the finals over BoarControl. Nalgudan and Aviera were 3rd and 4th. Hoy, Dizdemon, Legolas, and Zalay were in the top 8. As far as what decks were good, well, the metas were actually... they were pretty different. I think you can look at the same major pieces here and kind of see some overlap. In the Geico tournament, there were 8 priests in the top 8. 4 were Spiteful, 1 was Control, 1 was Big, and 2 were Mind Blast priests, which is an archetype you'll be hearing more about or at least you would be if it wasn't rotating tomorrow after we record. It's fine. It's fine. It's kind of based on the Zetalot archetype, where they talked about it over in Velen's Chosen. They call it Coin Master Blaster. It's these builds don't typically play Velen. They typically play Alexstrasza. They play Anduin. They play a couple Mind Blasts, and otherwise they are your typical control priest with a lot of removal. And the goal of this deck is to set you to 15 and then kill you over 1 or 2 turns. And it's usually pretty effective. I was surprised, but it was represented in both tournaments. In the top 8, there were 2 copies of this, as well as a big priest, a control priest, 4 spitefuls. The warlocks was 4 cubes, but 2 zoos and 1 control, 6 paladins, 4 of which were silver hands, 2 murlocs. The mages, now the amateurs really like secret mage. There was 3 secret mages, and then 1 quest mage because Disguised Toast is an animal, and then 1 Alana mage, which is also an archetype you'll hear about in a little bit. Spellhunter is a favorite of the pros, and I think rightfully so. It continues to perform exceptionally well in the tournament circuit. And then you get to the weird decks. 2 of the next 3 here are decks that were brought by our friend Disguised Toast, including Ixlid Combo Druid and Malygos Rogue. There was also a Cthulhu Spiteful Druid in the top 8. Yes, Ixlid Combo Druid. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, in
true
Wasn't-
hero
was-
of people.
Wasn't Cthulhu Spiteful Druid in the finals?
It was. Yoet's Flow made it.
Yeah.
That's a deck that he's been a champion of for a while. And it's just, it's Spiteful Druid, but you play Cthulhu, and you got a bunch of big minions, and you got a ton of taunts, and you have room for tech cards, and then your Grand Archivist casts Ultimate Infestations. I hit Legend with that deck, I think, last season. It's really, really good, and surprisingly effective in tournament lineups. And one of the few druids that did well, except for, of course, the typical archetype of Ixlid Combo Leroy Druid, which you see all the time. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Now, as far as
Have you ever played against that deck?
No! Who's
Is
ever
it-
played against that deck?
Me.
What
It's
happened?
the worst thing in the world to lose to. They play like Leroy, and then they cube it, and then they Deathwing. Like they cube it a bunch, like faceless the cubes, and then they Deathwing and hit you for like 100,000.
So,
It's great.
it's fun, but let me clarify. Toast wasn't playing that version. Toast was playing the Quest version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
You have to play Quest in order to play all of the things.
Oh. Well,
Yeah, it's like that's the deck. It's just super fringe, and
Well-
I had the misfortune
Leroy
of playing
cube.
against it on ladder.
No, I
Yeah,
think
well-
there's a difference though, right? I think what you're referring to is Ghost ASA's list from Sydney. Like that doesn't use Ixalid because there's no reason to Ixalid if you're cubing.
right,
Oh,
it
yeah,
it
that's
cubes the Devil Sores,
Yeah.
and then it Deathwings. Yeah, no, this one, the game that I saw, which is one of our games to watch, where Toast won by going Ixlid, Leroy, Faceless, you take 25. That was, no cubes were involved in the harming of this Allie Straza. She just died. She just took 25. So, it's a different, I'm amazed to say this, but there might be multiple archetypes of OTK combo quest druid. And this particular one, I haven't seen before. So, the cube one I'd seen, like, in passing, but, that was Ghost ASA's list. It was
think-
weird.
I think this is also the second time that Toast has gotten a sort of cheese win over Alistrasza. The last time was with the what is it? The Hearthstone Invitational where they did the dungeon runs.
Oh, yeah.
And Toast beat the secret room with this this method where you just like you check it and make sure none of the secrets will proc, and once you know that you're ahead, their deck doesn't have very many cards. You just end turn every turn, and the secret room just fatigues itself.
Oh, that was like the lava-filled room or whatever, where it's all like...
The trapped room.
Oh, the trap room.
Trap room.
I still haven't gotten the trap room. I need to do more dungeon runs. All right, so enough talk about that. We'll get to that Ixlid deck later. But in Copa, the meta was a little different. There were still a lot of Q blocks, but there were more combo priests than Spiteful Priests by a lot in the top 8. There were 6 combo priests in the top 16. There were 3 Spiteful Priests, a few Control, a couple of Bigs, and one of those Mind Blast Priests. The Warlocks, there were 9 cubes, but 5 Control Warlocks and a Zoo. And then the Paladins could not have been more different. Instead of 6 aggro-based Paladins, there were 6 OTK Paladins. A few Silver Hands, 1 control, 0 Murloc Paladin. As far as the mages, there were 8 of them. Fully half of them were Alana mages. It's kind of insane how control heavy the meta was. There were 7 spell hunters out of 16 players. There were 5 rogues, 4 of which were quest, and then a weirdo tempo elemental rogue that I'm sure we can get somebody to talk about. And then 2 warriors, a pirate and dead man's hand, an evolved shaman, and a jade druid. So the most popular legendaries were Gul'dan and N'Zoth. The most popular epics were Geist and Doomsayer. Before I get into games to watch, Edelweiss, why did you play Elemental Tempo Rogue?
Because the deck is incredible. I don't know. I'd been playing it a bunch on ladder. This is Race's Tempo Rogue list. He won the previous Copa, although not with that in his lineup. And it's basically just like takes the good things about running a Keleseth Tempo Rogue, and it's like, well, we don't have Bone Mare, but Blaze Caller is a good card, and that fits in the old 7 slot. And you run a bunch of elemental synergy, Shadowcasters. I've had games where I've gotten like a bunch of Keleseths because my opponent couldn't kill it, and then I got copies off of either Shadowcaster or Sonya. Sonya is like my favorite card from that set. The deck just has a lot of value, and like to the point that Zalay tested against it a bunch because like he was trying to figure out what the hell to ban in my lineup, and he banned the rogue because he was just like, how the fuck do I beat this deck? Oh crap, sorry.
I told you make it a good one, and you did it. You did it.
Yep.
We got there.
So what was your exact lineup? I'm interested to see like what exactly was your lineup and what was the theory behind it? What were you trying to ban? What were you targeting?
Yeah, so the idea was I wanted sort of aggressive decks that to be able to deal with quest rogues, which none of them were in my pool. They were all in PNC's pool. And then, but still have enough value to take on some of the other decks. Like I wanted to be able to beat aggressive paladins and combo priest, and then I proceeded to not face any aggressive paladins and like miscued into the one combo priest. I don't know. It was
and it was a ban. I assume ban warlock strategy then.
Oh yeah, I was always banning Warlock. Much like when we were in Druidstone, I always banned Druid. I'm much more inclined to go for ban the best deck than target the best deck.
Well, that makes sense. I tend to like that strategy because generally the target the best deck strategy problem is that it's the best deck because its bad matchups are also still not that bad.
Yeah, it's like ban the best deck, but it's the best deck, so you're probably gonna have a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you can see evidence of people trying to hard target with 4 quest rogues here. But the thing about Warlock as well is that if you don't ban it and it's a zoo, then you just die. And I've always believed in banning the most diverse class because it's mostly paladin in this meta, I think, where you can kind of you either see a bunch of control or a bunch of aggro, and both are kind of good. But with Warlock, it's still a lot of players are more than happy to bring Zoo, and if you don't ban Warlock because you can target it with Quest Rogue, and then I play turn 1 Flame Imp, you're like, well, I lost.
Although most things are open deck lists now.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean it's open deck list, but like when you're making the deck, it's not open, right? So you go in with one strategy in mind, and then you're like, okay, this is a full aggressive lineup. Now what do I do?
Yeah, like the ban can be adapted, but if you don't have the proper tools in the toolbox to adapt to what your opponent has, then you're disadvantaged. And I guess that's kind of what happened to you, Edelweiss, that you were expecting all these combo priests and aggro paladins. They just disappeared. You look at the decks that people were playing, and it just seems like such a bizarre shift of the meta with all these OTK paladins and Alana mages.
Yeah, it was a little weird. One of the Spanish casters, what he said was that PNC and I kind of ended up in like the opposite groups of what we wanted. Like if we had been switched, both of us would have had much better odds. PNC and Hoy actually had the exact same lineup because they playtested together. But yeah, I would have loved to face all those quest rogues, and some of the aggressive paladins and pirate warrior. Just none of those things were in my group. So
I'm interested to see why you think people are going to Alana Mage, and it seems like they're going away. I assume most of these lists are going away from Syndragosa. Is Alana just better because it presents the threat right away, and you don't have to go for like the N'Zoth value late game, or what do you think the purpose of Alana over like the Syndragosa package seems to be?
Yeah, I think it's a lot better as a threat, right? Syndragosa gives you a ton of value, and you can maybe grind them out, and it helps you make elementals. But Alana tends to be just like, okay, you time when you play it perfectly, so that it's just like, and now you can't deal with this, and so you die. Or like, your only way to deal with this is Psychic Scream, and now I win in fatigue. Something like that. Especially against like more aggressive or mid-range kind of decks, if you can set up some kind of Doomsayer turn or something, and then drop Alana on an empty board, it just lets you immediately win that game and not have to worry about like, oh, well, they can pop my block again because they're just going to die.
I can speak to some of this if you'd like to hear my input, because I played a lot of like Control Mage, and I talked to Tic Tac a little bit while he was messing around with the N'Zoth build. He kind of popularized that. And the N'Zoth version is more of like you're expecting to play against Warlock, because like you have to be able to grind them out. Like your Dragon Caller is not good enough there. Like they're gonna have a ton of removal. You need to like really grind through their stuff. And a lot of times when people are bringing Alana Mage, it's just like, okay, we're not going to play against Warlock. That matchup just is not good for us. We don't have enough threats for their removal, and their threats are too much for our AoE, or for our AoE and our removal. So Alana is just like, clear the board, slam Alana, you're dead next turn. And a lot of time people can't deal with like 6/5/5s plus the 3/3. And yeah, usually bring like Control Mage if you want to kind of punish aggro anyways, so you don't really need the extra value of like Syndragosa in that super grindy late game.
Cool. That's kind of why the answers I was looking for. I appreciate that. Hat?
We got some smart people on this podcast. So, some games to watch. There were actually most of the games I watched. So, part of this might be biased that I was at the Geico tournament, but the ones that I really enjoyed seeing, there were a few of them from Geico. The one that I saw live was the finals. There were two sets of finals of Steve versus Amnesiac. Yo, what's slow is Steve, same person. It'll say Steve on the video when you go back and watch it. Final set 2, game 2. Amnesiac was on Spiteful Priest, and Steve was on Zoo. And Amnesiac had Dustbreaker as the second most left card in his hand the entire game, and masterfully played as though he didn't have it, I think for like 7 turns, 6 or 7 turns. It was really, really impressive to watch, because the whole time, he just had the Dustbreaker and wasn't playing it. And played out a bunch of small minions on turn 4 to challenge the board, knowing they were going to die, knowing they were going to trade into the Darkshire Councilman. And after Yoatslow committed 5 minions to the board, Dustbreaker came down. It was really, really impressive to watch. And he ended up capitalizing on a small mistake and took the win out of nowhere thanks to Mind Control on a Doomguard. Just because Yoatslow traded with a 5/5 instead of a 6/2, and that 1 point of damage was enough. I would definitely recommend watching Toast versus Allie Game 5. I looked at the deck list. This is definitely a Toast creation if I've ever seen one. And it is, again, the quest is completed on turn 9. Because Double Cursed Disciple is amazing for the quest for Druid. And yes, Druid quest. I have to clarify that. I know it doesn't come up very often. And 4 Leroys and a hero power was enough to seal up the game, if you can believe it. Then Toast versus Steve, game 1. Spiteful versus Quest Mage. Toast is one of the best Quest Mage players I've ever seen. He's gotten more reps than I think anyone has gotten on Quest Mage that I can think of. And he navigates this game against Spiteful Priest very, very tightly. It's definitely an exciting game to watch because Toast gets to the point where he has to go 5 Sorcerer's Apprentice, Blizzard, pass. And there's 1 slot left on the Spiteful Priest board, and hope there isn't a Dustbreaker. And there's the Antonitis in hand, and the Time Warp triggers next turn, but he has to just go 5 Sorcerer's Apprentice, pass. And the way that he gets the game to that situation and reads his opponent and successfully navigates the game, and Steve, by the way, had 9 cards in hand. 9. Playing into the Dustbreaker was a bold move. It was his only out, and it ended up getting there. So, would strongly recommend it. There are actually quite a few games there as well, and we're being recommended from the chat here. Blah versus Toast, that Blah beat Toast because his Grand Archivist got freed from him or got Noggin Fogger. I love a good Noggin Fogger, so I would definitely also check out Game 2 of that series. For Copa America, I honestly really enjoyed the finals more than anything else. It was BoarControl versus Muzzy. There were tight matchups. Both players are excellent players. And BoarControl was playing Spellhunter in this game, and Muzzy was playing OTK Paladin, which, when BoarControl drew Yasharaj in his opening hand, of course, that's not a good situation to be in. I don't think the matchup is all that favored for Spellhunter anyways. But seeing how quickly Muzzy was able to pivot his game plan and make sure that he became the aggressor and closed out the game before any time went on, I think is just an indication as to why he's such a strong player. So I would definitely check that out as well. It's the game 1 of the finals versus BoarControl Muzzy. The whole finals there is definitely worth watching, and they're really 2 players at the top of their game. As far as what we have to deal with for the next couple weeks in tournaments, the Invitational is the main one. That's going to be our tournament for the next week or 2 while the metagame stabilizes, and then tour stops resume April 27th in the APAC region, HCT Taipei. DreamHack is May 19th, and then we've got HCT Japan in late May. But otherwise, tournaments are definitely going to dry up for a little bit. And we'll get a few more, meme events, I think, and fun events, but while the metagame is stabilizing, there usually aren't as many HCT tournaments, and if I recall correctly, and any of the 3 of you can tell me if I'm wrong, I believe this upcoming month does not count for points. Is that accurate? For ladder?
No, it's best of 3. It's best 3 out of 4 months.
Yes. So this month does not count.
No, that's wrong. It's best 3 out of 4 months. So all 4 months count. You remove your lowest score.
Okay.
Oh,
So
that's so nice.
that's
Yeah.
actually great. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it was only the first set that all 3 counted because there was only 3 to count. So it just counts your 3 best. And I believe that's the same for the next set of 4 as
Oh
well.
wow, I didn't actually know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a nice way to do it. So you can have you can either like do really well the first 3 months and then not have to worry in your last month, or you can just not have a good month and it's not a big deal because you can make it up in the last one.
Well, that's just fantastic. Okay.
Big improvement.
Well, then I think that you will probably see streamers being competitive at the end of the month, but we got a couple weeks where anything goes. And in my experience with rotations, it is the best time of the year, and it takes a couple months for everybody to figure things out. Usually that first month meta is so absurd that, well, why don't we talk about it? How about that? Why don't we talk about it?
So what are we talking about, Hat? So, okay, so like we said in the beginning, we're not going to go over every card because a lot of them have been like revealed since we last did the podcast, and that would be nuts. It would go infinite time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over 1 card we think is overrated, and 3 cards that we think are underrated, and then we're going to go over our archetypes we want to play on day 1, and then what we expect to play against, and then we're going to go over what our predictions are for the winners and losers in terms of classes. So first up, let's just start with Botticus because he's the first on the show notes. So I'm going to go in order. So what do you have as your underrated and overrated cards?
Okay, so I kind of cheated with with this list, I didn't do so much underrated. I just picked 3 cards I wanted to talk about, and then 1 card I think people are talking too highly of.
I like the shot hat right here.
Well, no,
It's
yeah.
why you do this? Why you do this?
Well, so my first card I do think is underrated. It is Book of Specters. I don't understand how people aren't freaking out about this card. Like, this card, 2 mana, draw 3 cards. Yes, there is a very significant deck building challenge you have to do, but that is completely bonkers. That is such an overly powerful thing that I just can't believe that people aren't going crazy over this. Yes, it is in Mage, but you have to also realize that everybody was kind of lulling at Spell Hunter last set, and now Spell Hunter is probably one of like the top 5 decks in the metagame now, even though it's not playing some of those spells matters cards. But I don't know, just if you look at even a conversation we were having earlier about threats, if you literally just jam a bunch of creatures into a mage deck, like you go to the most extreme case scenario, right, where you just play 28 creatures and 2 Book of Specters, and it's just always 2 mana, draw 3, as long as the creatures are like pretty good, then this card is just bonkers. And I even think, like, I haven't done the math, but even if you changed it where you had like these 2 Book of Specters and then 2 Fireballs, then like your chances to draw 3 cards are really high. And even 2 mana, draw 2 cards, like if they just created a card that was 2 mana, draw 2 cards, that card would be way too good. Arcane Intellect is already like played in the majority of mage decks, and the difference between having 1 card that essentially gives you a 2-for-1 and a card that gives you 3 cards for 1 is just astronomically different. So this card, talk about this card, Appa.
I can see this one. I think like the home that it kind of wants to be in is obviously very minion based, and I think a shell kind of already exists for it in Elemental Mage. It's traditionally been like not good enough, because I mean we've been working with like Mean Streets and all the past sets from the past year, which are all like really good. But I feel like Elemental Mage, it's powerful. Like the elemental synergies are very powerful, and they usually don't run very many spells except for like 2 Fireballs. And even in this meta right now, you could either run the 2 Fireballs or like 2 Polymorphs, and like get away with Book of Secrets in there. I think that would be like a reasonable shell to stick that in. Like you were saying, 2 mana, draw 2 is very, very strong, and 2 mana, draw 3 is bananas if you get it to go off. And like, I mean, 2 mana just cycle a card is not fantastic, but I mean, like, worst case scenario, that's what it is, and like that's not awful, but you're not too happy about it.
Yeah, and people focus on like but if you draw 2 cards and you discard a card, it's like, well, that card could just be on the bottom of your deck. It's like people always freak out about Gnome Feratu milling the card off the top. Like that card is essentially irrelevant. Like I don't know, this card, I'm really excited to play with it. And it kind of lends itself, as you said, Elemental Mage, the big card that I was talking about last set that hasn't really seen a lot, but I think could be very strong, is the Leyline Manipulator in a deck like this, especially when you mix it with the kind of obvious combo of Archmage Aragol. Yeah, I'm in love with this card. I can't wait to play with it. So are we gonna just go over all my cards, or should we go to some, like, everybody does a card and then go back to the top? I think that might be better, so I'm not just talking for the next half an hour.
You win. We do that, and I'm gonna edit out all this shop talk. But patrons, this is for you. We love you. You're amazing. No one else will hear this. This is just for you. Also, did we specifically say that Book of Specters draws you Jaina? Because
yeah, it can draw you Jaina and the weapon, and it doesn't discard it. Yeah.
Yes, it keeps Jaina. Big deal.
You're probably not running the weapon if you're running a Book of Specters,
yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's a big difference when you can't throw spells at their face like you can in Secret Mage, because just playing minions out onto the board every turn is generally not as good. But yeah, Book of Specters, expect to see that card a lot, assuming that minion-based Mage is good.
You missed a perfectly good pun, and I'm kind of disappointed. Expect her to see that card.
Ah.
Can you blame me for missing a pun? I missed Whispering Woods or whatever.
That's
You also missed Call to Arms. Okay,
That's-
my
whoa,
that's my
whoa.
weekly shot at
so
Botticus.
rude. Listen, okay.
No, I deserve it. Have you seen Call to Arms?
Hold on a
I
second.
play that card way too much now.
All right, we bring this up every episode. It's a new year. We need to move on. We need to forgive and forget. We're all going to make some really high-profile mistake in the next, 6 hours. In the next segment. In this segment, we're all going to make mistakes. So let's commit that going forward, this is our last episode in the year of the mammoth where we give Bot crap for missing Call to Arms.
Can I give myself crap for missing Call to Arms?
You may self-crap, but you may not be externally crapped.
Okay,
All right,
great.
Boy, that could have been phrased better.
so how about this? This will be the last episode where we dunk on Botticus for missing Call to Arms. For the next expansion, whoever misses the hardest, then we give them crap about this next miss.
Well,
I am okay.
To that.
The Wheel of Pain is fine. I'm all about the Wheel of Pain. That can work.
All right.
So after that wonderful segue, I'm sure there's no pressure. Hey, Edelweiss, you want to talk about a card?
Yeah, so first on my list of we're doing underrated, right? Yeah, underrated cards is Splintergraft. I don't think it's gonna break the game by any means, but a lot of people have been saying that oh, what are you really gonna put this on? And I don't know, maybe it's not so much that it's underrated. So I think some people are kind of underrating it, and some people are kind of misinterpreting its use case in standard. People are like, oh, do it on a boar so you get a charging 10/10. But I think that its best case is really with something like Arcane Tyrant, where you just you get it on the Arcane Tyrant, and then some point later you Ultimate Infestation and get a free 10/10. I think that something like that, or I think on Dawn's Chosen they mentioned Happy Ghoul. I think that's a little too much more of a build around, because then you have to include healing, and armor is generally Druid's healing at this point. But yeah, something like Arcane Tyrant that just becomes free on a certain condition, I think is what you want to use Splintergraft on.
That's
I had not heard that one before. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, or Arcane Giant. If you get to the point where you have Splintergraft Giant, it's a small upgrade, but it just doubles it.
It's rotating though.
That one's rotating.
Oh, well, good. I didn't like that card anyways.
All of the giants that you can do it with are pretty much rotating. You could kind of do it with Sea Giant, but that seems really scary because that means your opponent has a lot of creatures on the field as well.
Wait a minute. Hat just brought something interesting forth, though. If you're making a copy that's a 10/10 that costs 10 of a giant.
Oh, yeah. So Mountain Giant, if you had a hand of 9 cards, you got the giant, it would be 1 mana.
Well, and Molten Giant, I guess, in Wild, then.
Yeah. Well, if you're playing your free giant on turn 9, you're 4 turns too slow. Come on now.
Well, all right, yes, but
this was my original reaction to it. It was hey, this is probably good in Wild with Naga Sea Witch, and it's a little slow, but it can still double up a giant afterwards, plus make it play itself too, which is nice to put on extra pressure after something's been shadow or deathed or something. Sometimes you don't have the Naga Sea Witch quad giant draw. Sometimes you only have one or something. You need to put on a little more pressure. But yeah.
Yeah, I think her point is great though, just that you're probably not going to try to do this with a creature that costs mana. You want to try to break it with something like an Arcane Tyrant or a Happy Ghoul or a Giant. Like, that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it with mana, and for those that don't know, this is the Druid Legendary. I realize for audio listeners we didn't say what the card is. It's an 8 mana 8/8 Druid Legendary. Makes a copy of a minion on your board, and it makes that a 10 mana 10/10 in your hand. So the direction I've seen a lot of people going, and I was including this as well, is you copy a Serenite Chain Gang and you get 2 of them. Or I was thinking of like a turn 8 Grizzled Guardian, which is the 8 mana 3/5. When it dies, you recruit 2 minions that cost 4 or less. Your opponent really doesn't want to kill that. So if you then copy it the next turn, and the following turn on turn 10 you make a 10 mana 10/10 that has the same effect, you're basically guaranteed minions for the rest of the game. I've also heard about what happens if you copy a Hadronox, and I think you could just keep a lot of recursion going throughout the game. It's greedy, it's slow, but yeah, Edelweiss, I really like your idea of just copy something that's going to be free and gross and then do druid things.
All right,
Manifestation's a good card.
Yep.
So I hear.
All right, Appa, what do you want to talk about?
First up, I wanted to talk about Cathedral Gargoyle. It's a Paladin epic. It's 2 mana 2/2. There's Battle Cry. If you're holding a dragon, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. And I think this card's very easy to gloss over because like the deck building restriction is pretty significant because we are losing a lot of dragon enablers, like Netherspite Historian, those kinds of things. But Paladin traditionally hasn't had too many dragon enablers. I think this could go in a deck that has weapon synergies and just efficient dragons, because a lot of the dragons that were printed just play a good mid-range game, like Cobalt Scalebane. Primordial Drake's seen play in Paladin before. You can get it off Stonehill Defender too, which is awesome. And I think Ebon Dragonsmith, the 4 mana 3/4 dragon from Cobalt and the Catacombs, it has Battlecry, reduce the cost of a random weapon in your hand by 2. That's very, very powerful with the Paladin weapons, like Vine Cleaver, the new one that costs 8, although I don't think you'd put that in your deck in this kind of deck. You can also reduce the cost of Unidentified Maul and True Silver Champion, and those are very powerful. So I think Valenier also. Yeah, that's
one.
That's very true.
I forgot about Valenier.
Don't forget about Valenier.
So I think just those kind of Ebon Dragonsmith is obviously the smallest of those, but I think the Battlecry you get off of it is efficient enough that you'd be okay with playing it in that kind of deck. So I think putting Cathedral Gargoyle in kind of a mid-range style deck like Lost in the Jungle, Righteous Protector, curving into this, or some other 2-drops. Probably don't play Call to Arms in this kind of deck, but you just like go up the curve with efficiency every turn and then kind of just grind the game out that way. It'll probably be hard to beat like a Q block or something because they just do the late game better than most, but
you could just say it's going to be hard to beat a Q block. Doesn't matter what you're playing. It's probably going to be hard to beat a Q block.
But I think this is a very interesting build-around card, and the effect is very, very powerful. So I think it's not being talked about enough, or like at least analyzed enough.
I think that Fairy Dragon's also a reasonable inclusion if you're looking to like
that's
still play Call to Arms in this card. Like I kind of didn't talk very highly of this card whenever we were talking about it, and I do think it's obviously a pretty powerful effect. It's just not where I was excited about Paladin going, but definitely like Fairy Dragon in this card and a Call to Arms version of Paladin seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I think like you kind of almost can't not run Call to Arms in Paladin right now, no matter what you're playing. And so one of the arguments I've heard against this card is that like, oh, you don't really want a vanilla 2/2 off Call to Arms. I kind of think that's sort of fine. Like you were okay getting Hydrologist off of Call to Arms, even in like some Exodia Paladin lists. But I don't know. I remember Shielded Minibot. Shielded Minibot with Taunt is even better. So
yeah, it turns out Argent Squire with Taunt is way better than actual Argent Squire. So that's why I'm like really excited to play with this, because like whenever it activates, I'm sure I'll just be like, oh man, this game's gonna be hard for my opponent.
All right, Hat, I think you're up.
Do you think it's going to be shielded mini bot that often? I don't know. I'm curious. See if that
I'm
card's
not
good.
excited about Ebon Dragonsmith in this theoretical deck, but I keep forgetting about Primordial Drake, which I'll talk about later,
Yes.
kind of. But Primordial Drake seems spicy, and this card definitely feels like a card that goes in your deck that has Primordial Drake too.
Yeah. Well, and if you Evan Dragonsmith the Vine Cleaver and play it on turn 5, that's pretty gross. It's really, really
Yeah.
good.
I think
and-
Eben Dragonsmith hasn't seen play because none of the decks that really run weapons have been dragon classes, but it might see some play in Paladin and Hunter now that like we both have a more limited pool of dragons, and those classes have some pretty strong weapons that can get reduced.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Speaking of weapons, my underrated card is one that I expect we will see a lot. I think it's one of the strongest cards in the set. It is Hench Clan Thug. It is a neutral 3 mana 3/3, and when your hero attacks, it gains +1/+1. Card is gross. Super duper good. Because if you're a rogue, you click that little button next to your face on turn 2. Then on turn 3, you play Hench Clan Thug and you attack. Oh wait, you got a 4/4. The next turn you attack, you got a 5/5. It's a turn 4 attacking 5/5. That's good. Now, you need early weapons, or you need to be Druid and hero power a lot, and even that's only okay. But if you have a class with early weapons like Hunter, which has Candle Shot and Eaglehorn Bow, or Rogue, which has the hero power, which is particularly where I think this card is good, I think it has the chance to get out of hand very, very quickly and compare favorably to Questing Adventurer. In an aggressive deck, it's especially, you're just going to be able to get it so much bigger, so much faster, and the chance of being able to dominate the board and make a 5-attack minion super fast, it just seems really powerful.
So I have a question for you with this one. I don't disagree. This card is powerful and the effect's real powerful. My question is, do you think this is going to scale past a 5/5 often enough to make this better than Marsh Drake? Marsh Drake is a 3 mana 5/4, which has Battlecry summon a 2/1 poisonous Drake Slayer for your opponent. And the reason I'm comparing the two is obviously because you dagger on 2 and you plan to attack on 3. And if you play Marsh Drake, you can just attack the 2/1.
Well, the deck I want to play on day 1 has both, so
Okay.
absolutely, I think it's fantastic because you're basically building a deck around your turn 2 play isn't Keleseth, which you have to draw, it's Dagger, which you start with. You play a 1-drop, you Dagger, and then you play something that attacks for 5 on the next turn on turn 3.
Yeah, I was just looking through the spoilers, and I thought the two cards were fairly similar in terms of like what you're wanting to do on turn 3. So
Yes. I agree. I think that Hench Thug is better later. It's better when your opponent doesn't have taunts. It's just more universally applicable, I think.
Yeah.
And if you're a Druid deck and you play this on turn 3, like whatever, but then later in the game you can hero power every turn. I think there's a lot of classes where you can set it up where this thing becomes a pretty good deal for the mana. Rogue is obviously the best because you're just so consistently going to have that weapon to attack with, and I'm not sure if you need to put Kingsbane in the Rogue deck to make sure you have a supply of attacks without leaning on your mana too much, but the Tempo Rogue deck that I built for day 1, it tops out the curve at 5. And I think the expectation that at a certain point you're going to have more mana just to be able to continue putting the pressure on is really about abusing the amount of attack you can get on turn 3. So I think that Marsh Drake is definitely an inclusion in that deck. And I think Hench Clan, if nothing else, even if it's just a 3 mana 4/4 with no restriction, like, that's cool. I'll take it.
Yeah, they've been real hesitant about printing like actually playable 3 mana 4/4. So like when there is one that you can like make without any restriction, then you might want to try it out.
Yeah, I think the biggest restriction though is if you're going to be able to play a rogue deck that can afford to dagger on turn 2. I'm not saying that you can't. That is my biggest issue with both of these cards. I do think this card is good. But I do worry about a card like Marsh Drake because it's not as simple as, oh, I just dagger on turn 2 and then play Marsh Drake and attack the 2/1. You're taking the damage there, and also you're not dealing with whatever your opponent did on turn 1 and 2. So that's the only thing that concerns me in a controlling meta that doesn't have a lot of taunts that are going to get in your way. This card's bonkers, but that I'm just worried about how the first couple turns of the game look. Is all I'm trying to say.
Just wondering, what have you been doing on 2 in Rogue anyway?
Keleseth.
Well, in a minion based rogue deck, sometimes you're doing stuff, sometimes you're not, right? Like I don't know, it depends if like Keleseth is ideal, but it's not that you're daggering on 2, it's that if your opponent is playing minions on turn 1 and 2 and then you're giving them a minion that you have to attack, then it's you're just kind of putting yourself a little bit farther behind, right? And then if they have a taunt and you play a Marsh Drake, obviously, then
Right.
you're in trouble, which is another reason why I think Thug is. I'm glad you chose Thug, because that's just a better choice, because you can just attack the Serenite, or not Serenite Chain, the Stonehill Defender or the Tar Creeper or whatever it is.
Yeah, but I agree with Edelweiss as well. The amount of time that I dagger on 2 in every rogue deck I've played is just so frequent that I think this is not really much of a compromise. I do think the biggest compromise that your best case scenario is you don't attack on 2. And so if there are decks that are faster than you, it's going to kind of suck, because you're going to want to attack on 2, attack on 3, and then you still only have a 3-mana 4/4, but I think the low roll there is still good enough that it's just a really efficient package with the opportunity for upside if the game goes longer.
Yep. All right, so I'll get into my next card. This is not a card that I think is necessarily underrated. It's just a card I wanted to talk about. It's called Life Drinker. It is a 3-mana 4/4 beast with the battle cry of...
It's not a 3-mana 4/4. 4-mana 3/3.
4-mana, sorry.
If it was a 3-mana 4/4...
Important difference.
Yeah.
I should probably have pulled this up to look at it, but anyway. 4-mana 3/3 beast, and battle cry, when it... battle cry, 3 damage to your opponent, you gain 3 life. I'm just kind of... I like this card. I don't know what it is. It's a card that's easily overlooked, and I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking it, but it feels like a card that could potentially go into kind of a mid-rangey deck that's looking for a little bit of extra reach, maybe needs a little bit of life gain, but the big application, which a lot of people have found, is the Shudderwalk combo, and it just kind of fuels that. You don't have to play, I think it's Night Prowler. A lot of people are putting both in the deck. I don't see it. Nightblade, the 5-mana 4/4 that deals 3. Not excited about that card. Excited about this card because it kind of fuels that that version of the deck, because I guess kind of the combo. I mean, Shudderwalk's the other card I wanted to talk about. I guess I'll just talk about both of them. It's a 9-mana 6/6, and you replay a battle cry, replay all battle cries that you have played during the course of the game. So I feel like there's probably going to be 2 different kind of Shudderwalk decks. There's the Shudderwalk deck that's just value, where you play a bunch of stuff like Stonehill Defender, and I think both decks will play Serenite Chain Gang, but just kind of maybe things that draw you cards, or just kind of basically you play Shudderwalk, get a bunch of value, and try to win the game from there. And the other version is the one that combo kills your opponent over 1 to 2 turns. So you play Shudderwalk, it repeats the battle cry of Life Drinker, and then you just need the Grumble World Shaker battle cry to kind of go off last, so after the Serenite Chain Gang goes off, it returns the Shudderwalk to your hand. It costs 1 mana, and you just keep replaying it. The biggest issue I've seen so far, because I've seen a ton of lists trying to go over this, is the fact that it feels like you have to play a lot of really understated minions, which I don't like. So a very common thing you see to prevent the combo from fizzling is Murmuring Elemental, and then I can't remember the other one, but it reduces the cost of your elementals.
Fireplume Harbinger.
Yeah, that one. And playing 2-mana 1/1s sucks really bad. If I can avoid it, do not want to play 2-mana 1/1s ever.
So the thing about the Shudderwalk decks that like I initially see, like I guess is like kind of an inherent problem, is like you think of Shudderwalk, and I initially saw it and I was like, okay, this is akin to Yogg-Saron, and like how it will come down as a giant minion, like does something unique and like should finish the game or catch you back up or whatever. It's like a panic button. But the problem with Shudderwalk is like you need to draw like all these cards already, and then like have assembled it's like I feel like it's like a 15 card combo deck.
Yeah.
Kind of. So it will definitely rely a lot on like Volcano and Healing Rain and stuff to stay alive, and it really needs to like cycle through the deck very, very quickly, and it can't really stumble, I don't think, against like the quicker decks, or else it's going to get punished really hard.
Yep. So I think you have to build it with that in mind. I feel like it's really hard to include much past Murmuring Elemental, but I do see why people are including it, because the way that you prevent your combo from fizzling, because you can kind of have it fizzle, which means it just stops working, by having the Grumble return creatures go off before all of your Serenite Chain Gangs, which means it returns other minions, which means your Shutterwalk doesn't go back to your hand, which means you don't get to do all the fun stuff. Seemed like you might have had some things to say about it, Edelweiss.
Yeah, I've been theory crafting this deck a lot and like looking at other people's lists and then fine tuning my list, which is ridiculous because we haven't gotten to play with it at all. So how can you fine tune a list you haven't played with? But I just like keep noticing things, and with my version, I run very few creatures and just use that new 4-mana 3/3 that pulls your lowest cost minion from your deck.
Okay.
So you could like get to a point where, you know, maybe you've found all your minions and the lowest cost minion is Shutterwalk, right? Like it just, the deck, basically the only minions are like 1 Murmuring, the 2 Serenites, the 2 Draw Things, Shutterwalk, and Grumble. And then all you have to do is Murmuring Grumble, so you get that 1 mana Murmuring. And if you have at least 1 Life Drinker and at least 1 Serenite, you can get it going. And I think that's really all you need, because the second, like your second turn after you've done it, you get to play it 10 times.
Well,
so
6, or no, because it returns the other ones. So
they all
yeah.
cost 1, so
Yeah.
that's 30 damage.
Oof.
And
That
it's drain
sounds-
life effects. So you were talking about like, yeah, they're understated, but the Life Drinker I really love because it you know, it still has the usefulness of gaining you a little bit of life at the same time as like getting the 3/3 down. Serenite obviously has Taunt, which is great.
Yeah, Serenite's just a good card. Like that's just
Yeah.
a card you want to include in your decks in general. So having that in the deck makes sense. It's just the Murmuring Elementals and stuff. Like your
Right.
early game just suffers so much. So I like my version has like Doomsayer, was having like Doomsayers and Apple Bombs in it, just as cards to try to survive as long as possible.
Right. And my thought is like, well, I want to have as few creatures as possible so that I can thin them out with this, you know, specific card draw thing, and then just run a ton of defensive spells. I have Hagatha in there. This is one thing that like I definitely need to play test to see if it's possible that like your hand gets too full from playing the Shutterwalk itself to the point that like you just wouldn't have hand space for the things that get bounced, and like that would be a problem.
Yeah. Yep, like that's why I would play Loot Hoarders over Novice Engineers, because I'm worried about if you're getting to the late game and you're actually comboing off with Shutterwalk, maybe you get to a situation where you start fatiguing yourself, and there's all kinds of things to take into consideration. But I'm sure somebody will probably come up with a deck that is good enough to win games. So I'm excited for that. Anyway, since you have mentioned Hagatha, why don't you talk about your next card?
Yeah, so I have Hagatha as an underrated card, and like I said, it might not be great in the Shutterwalk deck because maybe it clogs up your hands, so you just can't play the 1/1 copies enough. But I think for a like mid-rangey or control sort of shaman, I think it's really nice for just getting you that extra value. Yeah, people say the same as they did with Lyra. There's a ton of like bad hits, but I think even some of the bad hits are like situationally very strong. Like Earth Shock Silence is pretty great right now. Frost Shock Freeze is a broken mechanic, so like freezing anything can be really good.
It feels like when they finally revealed some of the shaman spells, it felt like it went up a bit. Like they didn't feel like they were overly powerful, but they did feel like they're strong enough to make the overall.
Right. Like, yeah, all the new ones are like reasonably useful. I'm upset that there's not another board clear, to be honest. But I think it's enough. And so if you do some kind of like elemental shaman, yes, the battle cry hits your own minions, but you get to pick when you do it. You know, you can make some trades so that it overall is favorable for you. And yeah, I think just the value generated is, you know, enough to just win games.
And so
Sounds good.
you're including Hagatha in a Shutterwalk Shaman list that sounds like Raza Priest. You're almost playing as few minions as possible just to maximize the board control, the card draw, and the combo pieces. Do you think Hagatha's or hero power, which audio listeners, that's whenever you play a minion, you get a random shaman spell. Do you think that that's worth including, or the hero power has any ancillary value there?
Honestly, I was thinking like it's mostly the battle cry, right? Like I had run Kalamos in some like Jade Elemental Shaman lists before, almost exclusively for the air invocation, right? The 3 damage to all enemy minions. And I think Shaman just needs the extra board clear of Hagatha. And yeah, if you get a few extra spells along the way that help you stay alive, then that's nice. But losing the totem hero power is not a huge loss anyways.
Yeah, I guess because you can't rely on it, you know, because, you know, RNG and hero power is a known weak spot of Shaman. But yeah, that makes sense. If you're swapping randomness, at least do it all at once.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Appa, let's get into your next card.
So for underrated, I put Sandbinder, which is, I want to make sure I read the text correctly. Where is it? Is it rare? Epic? Where are we at? There we go. Okay. So it's a neutral epic. It's a 4 mana 2/4 battle cry. Draw an elemental from your deck. And this is, I think it's underrated because like tutor effects are fairly powerful. And I think this could also fit in a version of the Grumble Shutterwalk deck, like the version that Botticus would be running with a stronger anti-aggro early game, but instead of the pull the lowest cost minion from your deck, you put these in there to draw the Grumbles and the Murmuring Elementals and stuff to make your combo happen a little more consistently. Obviously, it's like a different style of build, and we haven't played with it yet, so we're not sure like which way you'd want to go. But this also just has applications in like decks that just play elementals. I think the understated body is worth the effect, because whenever you have an elemental in your hand, like what do you want? You want another elemental. So this like kind of doubles up if you have one in your hand. I don't know. I think it's fairly underrated. And I haven't seen like really any talk about it at all until Abar posted about it earlier on Twitter today, and he was actually talking about it in the Shutterwalk decks. So I like the card. I think it has a powerful ability, but I'm not sure if that's enough to get it over the top. But I'll probably play with it a little bit.
I mean, tutoring is powerful. Like there's so many ways to go about abusing it, but anytime that you can get a specific type of card and you can build around it. Yeah, I think we've seen the most egregious examples being Possessed Lackey and Barnes, but that's also cheating mana. I think if you avoid cheating mana, still just draw specific cards. I mean, look at how consistently playable Curator was for years.
Yeah, like we're like not cheating mana and like getting specific cards from your deck, like Shadow Visions. It's obviously different because you're discovering, but I think the concept is still kind of the same. Like you're building a deck with this card in mind, and then you're like getting the effect from it, and it's not cheating mana in a way like Primordial Glyph is compared to Shadow Visions, but it's still very good.
Yeah, and I like it better as a tutor in that way than as like in an elemental deck, just because, as you say, like, yeah, when you have an elemental in hand, you want more elementals, but in particular, just for like curving into Servant of Kalamos, right? You need to have played an elemental on 4, and so you don't really want to drop this on 4. Maybe the draw is good enough like later on, but I think
I'm not really viewing this as like a 4 drop.
Yeah,
I'm viewing it as like a 6 or a 7 drop or something. Where like you kind of refill, because like playing this on 4 like feels terrible, and definitely curving into Servant's a problem, which is a lot of the reason why we didn't see Tolby or Stone Shaper, because like you do that, then you just can't Servant. So you like play Fireplume Phoenix on 4 and those kind of cards. So I think this is definitely if you're not playing like the Shutterwalk deck, if this is in an elemental like tribe deck, it's probably like a 6 or 7 drop or something like that.
Like Elven Minstrel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except you can backstab with that one.
It's backstab.
Yeah. All right, Hat. Take us into your next card.
Speaking of 4 mana 3/2s, in the least surprising pick I could have possibly made, I think Mad Hatter is incredibly underrated. Unless you were saying the card is dedicated to me and you are a fan of it, in which case I think it is appropriately rated. But I think about this card in any kind of deck that can be ahead on board, on turn 4 or turn 5 even, where you can use all your mana. You don't have to be ahead, period. You just have to be ahead at some point that turn. You have to clear their board at some point that turn. As soon as you do that, this card is slightly smaller than Blessing of Kings, and you get a free 3/2. Right? It's +3/+3. It can hit the same minion 3 times. Just throws the hats out there. And it's a 4 mana 3/2 that says give one of your minions +3/+3, or spread the love across a couple different minions. It buffs against Defile. It buffs against Hellfire. It's a threat itself, because a 4 mana 3/2 that buffs your board is good. And then it's if you manage to play it before you attack with some minions, it can be comparable to Keeper of Uldaman. That can't be used, as a tool to win on defense, right? Because Keeper of Uldaman was really, really good at that too. But it can be used to buff your own minion and effectively give that +2/+2 or +3/+3 charge. And there are so many decks that are capable of taking the board on their turn, even if they give it back the following turn. You think about how quickly Murloc Paladin can steal the board. You think about what this would be like on a Duskbreaker board. You think about what this would be like in Tempo Rogue. Backstab and this guy with a dagger up to clear the board, and all of a sudden you just have this massive board out of nowhere on turn 4. I think it's really being slept on.
All right. So hear me out.
Well, I just want to check. It was confirmed that this works on the same minion. Somebody confirmed it somewhere. Because I don't know if that's how it works. I mean, based on everybody keeps saying that it works like that, but I don't know. I could definitely see this only giving 1+1/+1 to like each minion that it is able to throw a hat to.
So it says randomly toss 3 hats to other minions. I'm looking up Mad Bomber.
Mad Bomber hits the same thing.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking up the language. Yeah, it says between other characters. So other minions and other characters is similar language. If it doesn't work that way, it's very inconsistent wording.
Right.
Yeah, so I was looking at this and I was thinking of it like just buffing other things, just +1. And that reminded me a lot of Crystal Weaver, not because of like, so Crystal Weaver is obviously a lot different and probably a lot better. But if you can like value trade off the board and then Mad Hatter, then you get a similar effect. And I think a similar effect to Crystal Weaver is powerful enough to take a second look at. So I guess just like kind of keep that in mind before you write it off. It's obviously terrible if you're behind on board. I feel like that's pretty obvious. But I think if you can build a deck like Zoo or a board-based aggressive or mid-range deck that plans on having the board early, then I think the upside's very strong.
Fair enough. Edelweiss, if you have anything to say on Mad Hatter, go ahead. Otherwise, go into your next card.
Yeah, I think I agree with Hat that like Rogue seems like the best one because they have the best ways of sort of clearing the board off without using their minions to do so. So yeah, I like the idea of that in some kind of Kalaseth tempo Rogue.
Rogue is the best one. Not Mad
Yeah.
Hatter specific, just in general.
Well, yes. So let's see, what did I have? Oh yeah, my next underrated card was Glinda. I just think the ability to give other things echo is potentially quite breakable, or at the very least, just very strong. And 6 mana 3/7 is pretty reasonable to tempo out. People have talked about it in terms of like control stuff, and I think like the best use case in control is like a Nosferatu, because I mean, let's face it, Azari the Devourer, usually by the time you get it off, isn't burning too many cards anyways. And if you like Nosferatu, 2 times is fine. If Glinda lives and you do it like 4 or 5 times, that's ridiculous. But I think honestly, its most likely use is in some kind of zoo where you can drop it on curve, and then if they leave it up, they risk something like, you echo a Knife Juggler and then a 1-drop 3 times, or you echo something like Acarus Veteran or Abusive Sergeant and like make something enormous to attack with. I just think there's a lot of possibilities that like people just aren't really thinking of in the zoo context, and it's aggressive decks are more the ones that want to be able to stretch that card advantage the way that Echo does. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think they printed enough cards for zoo to be good right now, but it might be a card to keep an eye on with future sets and future like cheap minions that could benefit from the Echo.
Famous last words of literally anybody who slept on Zoo at the start of an expansion ever.
Which has only happened like 7 times, so it's fine.
I feel like that's always how it is. Like it always looks like it's not like you can't play it, and then somebody just like makes it egg. It's like, oh, efficient things, life tap. All right, I'm in. Whatever.
Yeah, I definitely tried to build it. Did not look excited about it, but will probably end up seeing play. I think Glinda's biggest thing is Warlock has so many cards that you want to put in the deck. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much that it needs to be, its power level isn't there. It's that the deck around it feels like it needs to be there. So that I think that would be the only limiting factor to the card is, can you find a deck where it makes sense and not, is it powerful enough to make sense in the deck?
Right. And then of course the meme option is to just go all in with Meat Wagon and Summoning Portals. And then
and Leroy.
And then like pick your favorite giant. Like I don't know. Just make your stuff super cheap and then echo it. It's just a good time.
Okay. 18 damage combo. Turn 6, Glinda. Turn 7, 6 Flame Imps.
wrong person. You're dealing 18 damage.
It's true, but it is a very efficient
Molten
18
Giant
damage.
Did just get nerfed.
Yeah, but also is going. Yeah, it's true.
I think that's why too. Honestly, like if you're just like, oh well, I can now Glinda and play 6 Molten Giants. Let's go.
Yep, and some Fury Protector.
Right.
Yeah. Well, 5 Molten Giants then.
Yeah. All right.
Enough Molten Giants.
Yeah. You got to have the board space for the Sun Fury Protector.
All right, Appa. I'm actually excited about this card you're about to talk about too. So lay it on me.
So the card I think this card's honestly criminally underrated. I haven't seen like not one person talk about this one. I saw it like in a list as like an afterthought that somebody just like flicked in there. But this card looks sweet. It's the Glass Knight. It's a 4 mana 4/3. Paladin Legendary with Divine Shield, and whenever you restore health, gain Divine Shield. I'm trying to think of the 4-mana Cthulhu card. The 4/2 is a
Cthulhu's Chosen.
Cthulhu's Chosen. I have played a lot of Cthulhu decks in my time playing Hearthstone, and Cthulhu's Chosen is obnoxious for your opponent to deal with. And
every time I see that card, I'm just like, this card is so good. Like,
yeah, like
every board state, I'm just like, why is this card so good?
like even against small creatures or small minions where they can like pop the Divine Shield and like trade into it, it's like, okay, that's a 2-for-1. I'll take it.
Yeah.
And like Glass Knight's better. Well, I guess that's kind of contextual, but it's like in a vacuum, it's better because it's a 4/3 as opposed to a 4/2. And if you can find ways to like re-equip Divine Shield, it's gonna be like absolute hell for your opponent. Like this dude is gonna be like, I'm on the board and I'm not leaving. You gotta deal with it. And like the trick with this will be finding ways that aren't inefficient to give yourself health back. Like True Silver Champion comes to mind, and then past that, I'm kind of blanking outside of the 3-mana 2/4 elemental that restores you 3.
Any lifesteal.
Real good.
Yeah, Chillblade Champion is pretty dope. There's a lot of good lifesteal options.
Uther, the Ebon Blade, that weapon is bonkers.
Yeah, but I mean, turn 9.
So good.
It's a little late.
Yeah. But I think the Glass Knight is definitely a very, very powerful card. And I think this is one that I think has not seen nearly enough talk. And I'm definitely going to want to play with it tomorrow. It looks sweet.
Are you saying that people are glassing over him?
Yep, that's the perfect response from Appa. The only thing I will say is that I feel like the decks that are going to have the Glass Knight in them, it might not be the trying to gain life part that's hard. It might be the having life to gain.
Yeah.
Like, you might just be playing a deck where you're already ahead on board, so you haven't lost any life yet to be able to gain back to give it Divine Shield again. But as you were saying, I don't even think you need to necessarily gain Divine Shield again. I just think that the stat line of 4-mana 4/3 Divine Shield is solid.
Yeah, I think he's also like well-rounded enough that you can just like stick him wherever in Paladin. In that like he's I don't think he'll be as good as Piloted Shredder, but in the same way that Piloted Shredder was a 4-drop that you were like, okay, aggro, yes, mid-range, yes, control, yes. It's like he like checks all the boxes for kind of being efficient enough, I think.
Cool. All right. If nobody else has anything to add, Hat, go ahead with your next one.
Zap. Back zap. That's what I'm going to call it.
Back zap.
Back zap. It turns out 0-mana deal 2, real good. Shaman, Control Shaman hasn't always had really efficient early game swing tools or ways to deal with wider boards easily without overloading like crazy. This also works really, really well in aggressive Shaman builds, but it costs 0. Or rather, you don't pay the 1 until later, and I think being able to fit it into a difficult turn to clear a Divine Shield or get rid of that extra minion, I'd be really surprised if it didn't see play in these Shutterwalk combo decks. I think it's just a very efficient value proposition. It's 1 mana deal 2 damage, you don't even have to pay the 1 right away. Like, I'll loan you the 2 damage, pay me the 1 mana next turn, it's fine. And I think it'll be easy enough to work that into your curve.
Yeah, so since Kenny's off the show now, and I've been playing a lot of Wild, I just feel kind of obligated to give a voice to like Wild players who listen. And also, Aggro Shaman's my best deck of all time.
Oh
like,
man,
not
this
close.
card is bananas with Tunnel Trog.
This card is exactly what Aggro Shaman needs right now in Wild, because it's amazing versus every other deck, but it gets absolutely ranched by Paladin. It's so hard to beat Paladin because Call to Arms is so efficient, and their early game contests yours pretty easily, honestly. So you find yourself falling behind a lot. And if you have this in your opening hand, like Tunnel Trog into like Zap-O-Matic, like bump a Minibot, zap it, like that is so good for you. And this is like they really needed an early game card to kind of compete with Paladin, and I think this is exactly what the deck needs, because a lot of the time you're not winning the game via burst damage unless you're playing against control. A lot of it's just like getting on board with like really disgustingly big threats and then just never letting go, and just like forcing them to trade while you're hitting them for 7 a turn with your Flame Wreath. So I think Zap's definitely what Wild Aggro Shaman need, and I'll definitely be playing with some of that tomorrow.
Seems
Yeah.
good.
I've seen people call it bad backstab in so many places, and I've just been like, "What? I'm sorry. Backstab's a rogue card. This is Shaman."
Literally any card that gets printed in Shaman that has Overload, you need to take that seriously in terms of like for wild purposes. Because
Also,
like Tunnel Trog, literally just anything. It's like this has
backstab's
Overload.
amazing. So
Yeah,
a bad version of
backstab's
backstab
Yeah,
is
like,
still
we
really
can
also
be-
it doesn't need to be damaged. That's
right.
very
Yeah, so you
important.
can finish things off. Yeah.
We can be worse than backstab and still see play in like a lot of different ways. Like that is a thing that can happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
But it's like
Alright.
Moonfire has seen play, and the card is half a backstab, still good enough.
All right, so this is the juicy part. I'm excited to talk about what cards we think are overrated, and my card could definitely be the next call to arms for me. But I don't get why people are so excited. Well, I get why people are excited about Chameleos, but my opinion on this card is that people are putting a lot of value on the information that it generates. I think that the important part of information is knowing what they don't have, not what they do have. More so. It is important to know what they have, but I think it is much more important to know what they don't have, and I think this gives you such a minuscule piece of the puzzle of what their hand is, and I think that hand reading is probably just gets you more information in general, and then I don't know that you're going to be able to reliably get a card that you want from their deck often enough with this card. So I'm very willing to be wrong on this card, but I don't see it off the bat. I don't think the information is worth it, and I don't think the chance to get a good card, when a lot of the times you're either not going to have enough mana to play their good card, or it's not going to be situationally right, or they just play their card before this card has a chance to copy it. So this is just a card I love the flavor. That's my favorite part of this card, is that it's a chameleon that just copies stuff. That's awesome, but just I don't see this making the cut in later as it gets played. But
I really wish it like stayed with like the name Chameleon, but just like had the card effect. Like whenever it
Yeah.
took it. That would have been way cooler. But it's still really awesome.
The card is such a cool design, and I really like what it's trying to do, and I really think it's interesting and innovative, and it's so not worth a card. It's so not worth a card. And the turn you draw it, it's a 1-mana 1/1, and like learning how your opponent's gonna cube you in the face doesn't make it hurt less. You just see it coming. But like that Gul'dan, you can borrow Gul'dan. You get a new hero power, and they get a win condition. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I really like the design, and I think it's fun and interesting and really cool, and exactly what a legendary should be, which is different and unique and probably not quite good enough, and you definitely don't need it.
Like for every time this has like a really good case scenario, there's a scenario where he's now a Divine Favor or he's a Dark Pact, and you're like, well, this is completely worthless.
Yeah. So I just don't think it's consistent enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I had been like pretty into this card, but I think you guys may have convinced me otherwise. As you said, like, and I did know beforehand, yeah, it's a really terrible top deck. I do think you guys might be underestimating a little bit. Like, if it's in your opening hand, it has the potential to give you a lot of information. And like, yeah, you want to know what they don't have, but if you know all their cards, you know what they don't have. But it's possible that, yeah, Hat, as you're saying, like, if you're keeping it in your opening hand, just like the quests, that's one fewer card you get to work with. So
I think it
yeah,
just kind of
let's-
boils down to the is the information plus the ability to potentially play something if it rolls at the right time worth the card. And I'm not sure because we haven't really had this kind of effect before. So I think on first analysis for us, it's probably not. But I think this is a card that we'll definitely need to see play first, before we're really
sure.
get the feel for it.
Right. All right, Edelweiss. Let's hear what card you think is overrated.
So yeah, I have the lady in white.
Why are you saying it all weird that way?
White. Well, I don't know. That's how. What is it?
Say whip.
Whip? What?
Now say
Whip? No.
Cool
No.
Whip.
I'm just thinking of in Django. There's that scene where the guy's like, "If you'll join us, we'll be having white cake." It was a great moment. Anyway, yeah, a lot of people are really into this card, and I think it's a reasonably good card. It's draw RNG like Kalaseth and Raza, right? So if you don't get it on curve and you have built your deck around it, that's a little scary. And building your deck around Kalaseth, meaning no 2-drops, is different than building your deck around the assumption that your high health minions are going to have high attack as well. So I think if people build a deck purely around having Lady in White, then they're going to get screwed over, because there's 0/9 taunts or 0/9 taunts. But I don't know, it can still be good if there's a deck that happens to run a bunch of the minions with high health that are good anyway, and your win percentage just goes up way more when you draw Lady in White. But I don't think this is a card that you want to build your deck around strictly.
Yep, I totally agree. I think the most interesting thing about this card is if you kind of compare it to the current Dragon combo Priest, it kind of lets you play that later game that deck would sometimes do of just a mid-range deck. So after you play the card, it just makes the rest of your cards better mid-rangey creatures. But honestly, I don't think it's overall powerful enough, and it comes down so late. Even if you have it you have it right away on turn 6, it feels so late. You've gone through so many of the creatures in your deck that I kind of tried to compare this earlier to the Druid quest, where you're I really don't want to draw my creatures until after I've played the quest reward. You really don't want to draw your creatures until you've played this card, but then what are you doing in the early games? So I tend to agree with you on this. Appa, if you don't have anything to say about Lady in White, why don't you talk about your overrated card?
So my overrated card, I don't know how to pronounce this one. Is it Emerus? Is it Emerus?
Emerus sounds about right.
I need some Lore Master even here.
Don't we all?
Emerus is a 10 mana 8/8 dragon for Hunter. It's a legendary. The battle cry is double the attack and health of all minions in your hand. And when this card got spoiled, I saw quite a bit of talk about this in Hunter with Deathstalker Rexar as a way to make your end game better, which was really, really confusing to me. Because if you have Deathstalker Rexar, your end game is fantastic, and you don't need a 10 mana 8/8 in your deck, and you can't get this off of Deathstalker Rexar. And if you play this, you're locking yourself into 2 or 3 turns of being behind on board, most likely, because you're playing a 10 mana 8/8, and then you're playing a really, really big minion, and that minion was going to be really, really big anyways because it's a Deathstalker Rexar minion. So I think this is overkill. I think this is really big overkill in Hunter decks.
Yep, Same. This feels almost, but I think this feels almost to me like Cube, except I definitely like that ended up being kind of insane. So the only way that this card I think could be good is if there's some weird combo we're not thinking of, like cubing Doom Guards or whatever, but I don't see it. So I agree with you, but I just want to say Wicked Good, I did not choose this card as my overrated card. So
Don't at me,
just-
Wicked Good.
just-
Or at me, whatever.
I'm enjoying this subtle feud between podcasts we're having.
all right, Hat. Let me hear it. I want to hear your reasoning for your card.
Okay, so I want to point out the card, what we're talking about is overrated, and I don't think this card is bad, but I think it is exceptionally overrated, and I am choosing Lord Godfrey. If you don't know who Lord Godfrey is, Warlock 7-mana legendary, it's a 4/4, and it double defiles, right? It's deal 2, and then if that kills a minion, deal 2 again, and keep going, it doesn't hit itself. It's a good card. But, first of all, Control Warlock's power level is already quite high, and the deck is incredibly synergistic. Second of all, it has the most removal redundancy I can think of any archetype out there. You have Defiles, you have sometimes Mortal Coils, probably more of those now that you're losing Mistress of Mixtures. You have the Spellstones, you have Hellfires, you sometimes even have Twisting Nether, and Q-Block doesn't have time to play Twisting Nether, which is not conditional, and doesn't already play into your current weaknesses, which is to wide high health boards or single high health minions. And you can play Siphon Soul to deal with single high health minions, but wide high health boards, you're pretty bad about dealing with those already. And Godfrey doesn't really solve that problem. So I think Godfrey is a case of the rich getting richer, but I think calling it a card that people have been calling it of making the Control Warlock problem worse, if you beat Control Warlock, it's unlikely that Godfrey is going to be the one thing that keeps you from doing that. And if you already lose to Control Warlock, it's way before turn 7. This is not the card that's making you win or lose the game. It is exacerbating Control Warlock's current strengths and weaknesses. It's making its removal better. But I think that at a certain point of removal redundancy, I don't even know if you run this card. Because I think you have opportunity for high mana cost, non-damage based removal, or low mana cost damage based removal. But you don't really want high mana cost damage based removal when you're already struggling at that point against big wide boards.
Yeah, I posted, people were like posting their top 5 cards of the new expansion in the UHL, the United Hearthstone League Discord, which by the way is public now. Got a nice little plug in there. And I basically said that I'm really unimpressed by Lord Godfrey. Like the effect is very powerful. It's obvious that it's powerful, but the problem is it exists in a space where Warlock has Twisting Nether, Hellfire, Defile, these kinds of things. And the thing I'm thinking about is like worst case scenario, it's worse than a Primordial Drake. So like worst case scenario, would you play Primordial Drake in Warlock? No. And like best case scenario is like it Twisting Nethers your opponent and leaves behind a 4/4. Like, is that worth? I don't know. Like, I feel like the Warlock decks have so many tools right now that it's like this might just be overkill, and you might just end up with far too much AOE and like not enough stuff to do. I don't know. I'm not sure if it'll like go in the decks right now, but it's the effect's powerful. But I do agree with Hat that I think it's being overrated currently.
Like, if you're playing this into a Cobalt Scalebane and a minion with 3 butt, nothing dies and then you die. It just seems like that's going to happen so often.
Yeah, to me it feels like a card that's going to show up in a lot of lists to start, and I think will stick in some lists, but I think there will definitely be people that find out that maybe it's not good enough. I don't know. I also didn't think Defile was. Yeah, let's not get into it.
Well, and I don't want to say saying not good enough is the wrong
Yeah.
way to go about it. I think it'll be the wrong fit in a lot of decks. I think the card is good. It is a good card objectively, and I don't even want to say that, but in terms of the value proposition, this card is basically Flame Strike with a 4/4, and that's pretty good. But Warlock is already a class that has a lot of similar effects to this. So I think Flamestrike with a 4/4 just isn't solving a lot of the problems that people develop ways to beat you that are good against effects like this. So I do think there will be worlds where Lord Godfrey is played. I think it will be in quite a few decks. I would not be surprised if it sees consistent play, but I don't think it's the right fit for a lot of Warlock decks, especially Q-Block, because I
Yeah,
think
so
that deck has enough tools.
so the reason we're saying that it's not like a fit for Warlock and it kind of exacerbates the weaknesses is, so if you haven't played the like control and cube Warlock style of decks, the way they play is they play a 1-drop on one, like either Mistress or Librarian, and then their entire game plan is like kill early things with Defile, Hellfire, the Spellstone sometimes, Doomsayers, and then curve up into hard removal in Control Warlock's case, because that's when people start playing like the really hard-hitting, sticky minions like Scalebane, Spiteful Summoners, those kinds of things. And this doesn't solve that problem at all, because it's coming down on turn 7, and it's not like a Siphon Soul or Twisting Nether. And then in Q-Block's case, what they want to do past the Hellfire and like AoE turns is equip weapon and start killing you. So this doesn't really advance the game plans of those, like, really at all. It just kind of fits in its own weird sphere where, like, Warlock doesn't really function right now. So I just kind of wanted to explain, like, why we're saying it doesn't really fit in, like, Warlock's, like, kind of game plan currently.
Okay. Well, we have talked a lot about all these cards. I think it was great. I think we all got to talk about some sweet ones. We'll go over the decks we want to play and expect to see really quickly. My 2 decks are Elemental Mage with, of course, Book of Specters. The card I just can't wait. I just can't wait to play it and draw 3 cards. I'm just looking. It's the thing I'm looking forward to the most. So Elemental Mage with that card, and then I expect to see a lot of Q-Block. It's probably going to be the deck I play on Asia, because I don't have a ton of cards on Asia, but I already have Q-Block, and hey, most of those cards don't rotate, so it's probably going to be pretty good. So yeah, I expect to see that deck a lot. And another thing about that deck is a lot of the decks I'm kind of thinking up in my head have a lot of things with 5 toughness, and like, Servant of Kalamos and 4/5s and all these things. And what's really good about against those is Doom Guards hitting them and then getting cubed and then making more Doom Guards, and then I'm gonna cry a lot. So Edelweiss, go ahead, talk about your your decks.
Yeah, so I absolutely want to play this Shudderwalk combo. I want to fine tune it. I want to bring it to a tournament at the end of the month. I think it's going to be great. I'm hoping it'll especially be good against Warlocks, because the Drain Life, you don't have to worry about Void Lords. But yeah, I expect to see, same as you, a bunch of Q-Block, and then just like random weirdness, because it's going to be a brave new world and nobody's going to know what they're doing. So should be good times.
Yep, it'll be exciting. No, no matter what you see, it'll be real interesting. All right, Appa, what do you think?
So I really want to play Baku Warrior, because Tank Up is awesome, and one of my favorite decks is Old School Control Warrior with Justicar, and I just want to tank up and kill things with Shield Slam. So I'm really excited to play with Odd Cost Control Warrior and like just mess around with that deck. Lose a lot to Warlock, but that'll be all right. I expect to see quite a bit of Snooze Lock, either Control or Cube, either one.
All right, Hat, you're last.
Day one, I'm going to be the fun bully, because everyone's going to be playing their nice, slow, fun decks, and I'm going to top my curve at 5 and play double Cold Blood, double Eviscerate, and double Sap, and nice Void Lord, take it back, nice Sandbinder, go bind some more sand, I don't care, and just hit you in the face, and play double Shadow Step, and just repeat all my super gross battle cries, top the curve at Vilespine. I think that later in the meta, I wouldn't be surprised if we slow down a lot, and it ends up being a meta where you want Lich King or Test Greymane, and you end up being a more value-generating Burglary Rogue with hallucinations and face collectors and blink foxes. But right now, I just want to go fast. I just want to eviscerate cold blood sap people, and everything else is based around the efficiency of those cards. In the list that I brewed, I mentioned it earlier, you're going to turn 2 dagger 90% of the time because your turn 3 is going to be either Hench Clan Thug or Marshdrake. So you're either going to play a 3/3 that turns into a 5/5 the next turn, or a 5/4 that just is a 5/4. I do also expect to see, especially after this podcast, a lot of walks. Just going to see a lot of people walking each other. And so while they're busy walking, I'm going to be roguing, and just the fun bully just going to rogue up and take your lunch money, and no, you can't get to turn 9 because we're through now. It's turn 8, and I'm Leroying you twice.
Sounds great. I'm excited to see all of these decks and try all of these decks. If you want to talk more about decks, I posted some of my first run-throughs in Discord. Feel free to go in there, post your own things. I love seeing what everybody's kind of coming up with. And Hat, I think it's time.
How long can this go on?
I think you're right, Botticus, and thank you so much, Edelweiss, for coming on Witchwood Eve, All Hallows Eve, maybe? I don't know which Eve it is.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'm going to read through our thanks real quick, get my radio announcer voice ready. All right. So thanks to Stefanel for letting us use his cover. Check him out on his channel, linked in our show notes. Big thanks to Hearthstone Top Decks, BeerBrick.com for Decklists, Hearthstone Tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs, and Hearthpwn for their tournament survival guides. The show notes for this week's episode, you can find them on CoinConcede.com. Monetarily support our show at Patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live and talk to us in chat at Twitch.tv/CoinConcedepodcast. Join our Discord. It's super fun. We talk about food. Discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Check us out on Twitter at CoinConcede. Check out our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Buy a t-shirt. I wore one at PAX East if you saw me. And big thanks to our producers, Calum CV, Viriatus, and
It's so fluffy!
Fluffy. Who would like to coin concede first? Appa, you
I
basically
already
did at the
did.
beginning of the show. No, do it again. It's been 2 hours. It's a new game.
Oh my god. Thank you to Hat and everybody who donated money. You know what? Because they're fucking amazing. You can go ahead and edit that.
Yeah.
Because I love everybody and this community is fantastic, and now I have cards for tomorrow. So I don't know. It's awesome. I'm just blown away. It's it's so cool.
It's Appa. You are a large elder sweetheart. Edelweiss, tell us who you'd like to coin concede to today.
Yeah, I'd like to coin concede Team Swagoy. I've got my team shirt on, but because Brandon, the captain, and the whole rest of the team have been very helpful in testing for Copa and everything, even though it didn't go, as well as I'd hoped. It's excellent just to have that resource and be a part of a team of dads. So it's great. Yeah, my other shout out is to Nerd Street Gamers, who are a group here in Philadelphia that they host a bunch of like esports tournaments. They've worked with Overwatch League stuff with the Philadelphia Fusion, and they kind of sponsored me for my time in Rio and have helped me a lot with attending tournaments and stuff. We have a big tournament that I helped pick the format for, called the Brotherly Brawl. That's at the end of April here in Philadelphia. It's a 10K. You can pre-register on Smash.gg, and we need more pre-registers because in the future prizes won't be able to be that big if we can't get enough pre-registers. So anyone on the East Coast, go on over to Philadelphia for our big 10K.
10K is a lot.
It is a lot. It's only
that's
paying
a
out to top
lot.
4 too. So
Oh, that's a lot.
That's a lot of Ks and not a lot of people. That's like 2.5 Ks a person.
I wish I was on the East Coast now.
It's
I would go.
I wish teleportation was more convenient.
one day.
Someday. You know what, Botticus? Why don't you coin concede next?
So I would like to coin concede to Cinder. I was working on a project that I can't really talk a whole lot about, but I basically was like, hey, I need some feedback on this. And he was like, here's gigantic multiple paragraph essay on things I could do to improve it, and it was all really great advice. So I just appreciate him taking out the time to give me that feedback, and I'll be able to put it to use and be able to share it with everybody soon.
Yeah. You know, and I'd like to coin concede I got a few people. Cora for being somehow nicer in person. Wicked Good for finally meeting up with me at PAX East. We were like Ivory and Ivory, and it was fantastic. Jetlaw from THL. He's a great dude. We also met up at PAX East. I'd like to thank Chicken for always being there for me and always being delicious. If you were not in the Coin Concede Discord today, we talked about Chicken, I think, for like actual 45 minutes, and it was just really special. And Legal Seafoods for being a bastion of Massachusetts clam chowder. On the way home from PAX East, we stopped there, and it proves you really can go home again. So it was wonderful to get a part of that. All right. Let's talk about where we can find our friends. Edelweiss, you are the guest. You go first. Where can we find you?
Yeah, so Recollection216 is my Twitter. I'm pretty sure my Twitch is just Edelweiss, maybe Edelweiss 1735. I'm bad at remembering these things. One day I will probably stream, but currently I don't think my setup is good enough. So that's the way it goes. That's pretty much all the places you can find me.
I am pasting you into our show notes right now.
All right, well, Hat's doing that.
All right.
I'll go with mine. So you can find me on Twitter at Appa_HS or on Twitch at twitch.tv/AppaHS. How about you, Botticus?
I am on Twitter at BotticusHS. You can find me on Twitch. I'll be streaming pack openings and playing some initial games tomorrow, twitch.tv/Botticus.
And you can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat, twitch.tv/RidiculousHat, where I will be there tomorrow. If you're listening to the raw audio, I'll be there Thursday night because it's Witchwood. And I'll totally... Yeah, Witchwood. I'll totally be there. Why are we whispering? So... And you can find Kenny on Twitter at KCCO Gamer. We still love him. But we also love getting some sleep, so we're going to call this episode a night. Merry Halloween to all, and to all a good Hallows Eve. That we'll work on that. Keep calm and rogue on, and if you see us on the ladder, coin concede.
Which one?
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Appa? You didn't say coin concede?
Which one?
That's... good enough.
Take cold comfort in your victory. You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death. You have triumphed. This time, this hunt is yours.
Yay!